20 years pass after the Great War, and somehow peace turns out worse than the chaos before it. Because petty theft becomes normal, exploitation feels routine, and quiet cruelty slips into everyday life like nobody even notices anymore, leaving DONGHUA, once the heart of Murim, looking tired and hollow. Everyone swears power has to be loud, flashing sect banners, flexing names soaked in blood, making sure the whole world hears it coming. But that idea stays wrong, because real power never needs to shout. My name is Ijin, and while this world stays busy, sharpening knives and picking sides, I move through it calmly, watching everything, saying nothing. The Dragon and Phoenix tournament gets praised like some holy stage where talent rises and legends are born, yet that picture only exists for the crowd, because underneath the silken ceremony, it is just a clean-looking slaughterhouse where sects test weapons, throw away the weak, and invite monsters who pass as people. I am not here for honor or fame, and I am definitely not here to impress anyone. I am here to watch, to listen, and to let things reveal themselves. This is the kind of world where heroes fall hard, demons bow low, and the line between man and monster fades until it barely exists. And while the masses cheer the wrong savior and curse the wrong enemy, the truth stays buried exactly where it belongs. This is not a story about justice or heroes. It is about what happens when a quiet man finally stops holding back, because once the tournament ends and the gates swing open, DONGHUA steps into an era it is not ready for. Welcome to the story of Ijin, the man who plans slow, smiles easy, and destroys everything without ever raising his voice. Rain pours steadily over the compound as guards stand watch outside, while inside the building, two men sit facing one another. Ibong-jin, the head of the Jinhua Merchant Alliance, recounts a bitter past that still burns within him, explaining how he once crossed paths with a man who destroyed his life by taking all his wealth and cutting off his fingers without mercy. His voice remains furious, and he warns Myong-gui, the most feared assassin in DONGHUA, that this enemy is not one to be underestimated. Myong-gui listens calmly and urges Ibong-jin to describe the man more clearly. After a pause, Ibong-jin admits that the most striking feature is the man's handsome appearance. He recalls meeting him by chance at a drinking gathering, where the young man's charm, intelligence, and polite manners immediately set him apart. Despite being only 20 years old, the man speaks with confidence gained from traveling across the Central Plains, and over 2 months, Ibong-jin grows close to him, slowly lowering his guard. Everything changes during a drunken moment when the man casually demonstrates martial arts, revealing movements that expose a hidden mark tied to Isang-nang, the legendary lightning blade, and one of the former 10 great masters of DONGHUA. The realization shakes Ibong-jin deeply, because Isang-nang disappeared during the Great Righteous and Demonic War, and even though the war ended 20 years ago, no one has seen him since. At first, Ibong-jin doubts the connection, yet his suspicion turns into certainty when he discovers a martial arts manual in the man's possession. Greed overwhelms reason, and he decides to kill the man and steal the secret, believing the sword of life and death would make him unimaginably rich. Many powerful masters, including Muak Cheon the demon sword, sought that technique and never returned, but Ibong-jin convinces himself that he will succeed. Instead, the man comes for him. With effortless skill, he severs Ibong-jin's fingers and takes everything he owns, showing no regret and even expressing satisfaction in doing so. The humiliation and rage never leave Ibong-jin, and he begs Myong-gui to kill the man, whose name he finally reveals as Igyeon-jeok. Myong-gui finds the story difficult to believe, yet the missing fingers in front of him offer undeniable proof. Later, Myong-gui moves through the compound and questions a servant, asking to be shown the room where Igyeon-jeok once stayed. The servant leads the way and speaks warmly of Igyeon-jeok, praising his kindness and respect toward even the lowest servants. As they walk, Myong-gui remembers his own investigation. Some servants describe Igyeon-jeok as an elegant young master, others remember him as a wealthy man who lost everything, and some mock him as a fool who gambles away his money while claiming it is all part of a greater future plan. He also learns that Igyeon-jeok once competed in a martial arts tournament, adding yet another layer to his many faces. Inside the empty room, Myong-gui searches carefully and finds little of interest except a map hanging on the wall. One location is circled and marked with the words, "Conquer Hubei," and the discovery excites him because Hubei is scheduled to host 2 major martial arts tournaments that year. He concludes that this must be Igyeon-jeok's next destination. Before he can reflect further, a presence appears behind him, and he is struck unconscious before he can react. When Myong-gui regains awareness, he finds himself pinned helplessly against a wall while 3 figures sit nearby, calmly drinking tea. As he observes them, recognition strikes one by one. The woman with sickles at her waist radiates overwhelming energy, revealing herself as Hwayong Yang, the supreme demon queen. The symbol on another man's sword marks him as Isang Nyang, the lightning blade himself, while the oppressive demonic aura of the third confirms Muakcheon's presence. In that moment, Myongui understands that these legendary figures stand together under Ijeonjok. They spare his life not out of mercy, but because they have sworn not to kill without Ijeonjok's consent, even though they have already crippled him beyond recovery. Knowing his fate is sealed, Myongui accepts it and ends his own life with poison, bitterly acknowledging that Ijeonjok stands far beyond reach. The scene changes to Ijeonjok himself, standing alone with two swords on his back, as a group of martial artists confront him. Filled with confidence and greed, they demand the secret manual, yet their arrogance collapses instantly. Ijeonjok moves faster than sight, killing their leader with a single strike before a sword is even drawn. Panic spreads as the rest attack, only to be defeated effortlessly. He blocks blades with a single finger and crushes them one by one, leaving their bodies scattered in seconds. When silence returns, it is clear that Ijeonjok remains untouchable. The Great War between the Orthodox faction and the demonic cult, a brutal conflict that lasts for 13 long years and fills DONGHUA with endless blood, tears, and despair. Yet despite the hatred on both sides, the war suddenly ends with an unexpected truce whose true terms remain hidden even after 20 years. And since that day, both the Heavenly Demon cult and the Orthodox Alliance choose silence, allowing rumors to fade while time moves on. As the years pass, new factions rise in DONGHUA, while others grow weak and struggle to regain their former strength. And among those fallen groups stands the Righteous Sword Sect, once a proud family that now fights desperately to reclaim its lost honor and position. Inside this sect, a young woman named Jong Charyeon trains without rest, swinging her sword again and again while frustration fills her heart, because no matter how hard she works, she cannot break through to the Seven Stars realm. And although she practices the Scarlet Trace sword art with fierce determination, her progress feels frozen, as if an invisible wall blocks her path. During one such moment, her sister Hwarian and her brother-in-law approach her, and Hwarian, the eldest daughter of the sect leader, calmly delivers unexpected news by explaining that a swordsman from the Palmessence Union named Jang has arrived and wishes to partner with Charyeon in the upcoming Dragon and Phoenix tournament. The moment she hears this, Charyeon feels shocked and offended, because she knows this tournament is one of the two greatest competitions in the Central Plains, where young martial artists fight in male and female pairs, unlike the Heavenly Dragon tournament that risks life and honor alone. And the idea of partnering with Jang instantly angers her since she sees him as nothing but a shameless pervert. Unable to hide her fury, she refuses outright and turns her anger toward her sister. Yet Hwarian stays composed and urges her to think carefully, reminding her that Charyeon dreams of restoring their clan's honor, and that participation could bring great prestige. But before Hwarian finishes speaking, Charyeon storms away in frustration. Elsewhere, the marketplace buzzes with life as merchants shout and display their goods, while under a shaded umbrella, several men speak loudly about recent events, laughing as they celebrate the news that the Grandmaster has lost another finger, calling it long overdue justice. As Charyeon passes by, exhaustion shows on her face, and she quietly wonders whether the Palmessence Union will retaliate, questioning whether those with power truly believe they can act without consequence. Watching the people of DONGHUA, she grows heavy-hearted as schemes, lies, and cruelty seem to rule every interaction, making her question the ideals she once admired, and she pauses, asking herself if this is truly the DONGHUA she once dreamed of. Her thoughts break when Ijeon suddenly appears beside her, as if emerging from thin air, and he calmly remarks that he too questions DONGHUA, pointing out that the Heavenly Demon's 9 calamities, also known as the Invincible Demon Art, cannot be defeated in single combat, and that the sudden end of the Great War feels like a ridiculous play. Startled by his words and knowledge, Charyeon turns to face him and silently wonders who he really is, while Ijeon casually suggests sharing a drink and asks her to guide him since it is his first time in Wuhan, only for her to reject him sharply, calling him a vagrant and stating she has no time. As she leaves, Ijeon asks whether she truly believes the current DONGHUA holds any value, forcing her to stop and demand an explanation, and he claims that ideals and chivalry died long ago, leaving behind a hollow world. Yet instead of getting angry, Charyeon challenges him by asking why he continues living here, then walks away while muttering that DONGHUA is not as hopeless as he claims, leaving Ijeon quietly reflecting on her words. Later, the Hwayang Inn overflows with noise as guests debate the Dragon and Phoenix tournament, arguing whether the Northern Heaven Supreme family or the Southern Peak Alliance will dominate. And when Charyeon enters, an attendant recognizes her as a member of the Righteous Sword Sect and offers her a discounted seat in a special room. unintentionally drawing attention. Embarrassed by whispers calling her Wuhan's best, she notices Ijin again, now teasing her, and soon sits beside him as he eats greedily and asks about tournament registration, startling her with his confidence, strange humor, and sudden seriousness. Just as Jang Ingyeol of the Palm Essence Union arrives, tosses gold at Ijin and orders him to leave, while Ijin calmly remains seated. Ijin remains calm and casually says that the single gold coin is not enough because more dishes are still coming to the table. His words immediately irritate Ingyeol, who sneers and tells him to leave while he is still being generous. Ingyeol's eyes drift toward Ijin's sword, and he laughs loudly, assuming the man is trying to show off simply because he is a fighter of DONGHUA. With a mocking grin, Ingyeol reaches out and tries to lift the sword, but it does not move even slightly. Surprised, he grits his teeth and tries again, this time pouring his internal energy into his arms. The sword finally rises a few inches before crashing back down, and Ingyeol quickly lets go, his face stiff with embarrassment. Forcing a laugh, he claims the sword must be a heavy training weapon meant to build strength. People around them nod and murmur in agreement, unwilling to believe that a real sword could be that heavy. Ijin does not react to their whispers. He simply lifts the sword with one hand, rests it on his shoulder, and states calmly that it is not a training sword. Ingyeol's irritation deepens, and he snaps back, accusing Ijin of lying and insisting the weapon is obviously fake. Their exchange grows sharper, and suddenly Ingyeol releases his energy, filling the room with pressure as the tension rises instantly. Before the situation explodes, Cheon steps forward and demands that everyone stop. Her voice cuts through the room, leaving even Ingyeol momentarily stunned. He turns to her with a crooked smile, studying her closely, and teasingly suggests that perhaps she is interested in him. Without warning, he grabs her hand and declares that they will compete together in the Dragon and Phoenix tournament, adding that it would be wise for them to get close beforehand. Cheon immediately pulls her hand free and firmly states that she has already chosen another partner. Ingyeol freezes in disbelief and asks why. She answers without hesitation, criticizing him for hiding behind his family's power and calling such behavior disgraceful. His expression hardens, though he quickly masks it, and he asks who she has chosen instead. Before she can answer, Ijin casually speaks up and says that he will be her partner. Confusion spreads across Ingyeol's face as his sister, Manhwa, steps forward and questions Ijin, asking if he even knows who he is dealing with. Ijin responds calmly, asking if she knows who he is. When she admits she does not, he explains that people usually react to the unknown in two ways, either by ignoring it or by fearing it. He says she is doing both at once. Manhwa listens with cold interest and gives a vague reply, neither agreeing nor denying his words. Ingyeol finally snaps, accusing Ijin of being shameless. Ijin shrugs and lightly remarks that eating well gives people confidence. He stands, straightens his clothes, and turns to Cheon, telling her they will meet again at the tournament before walking out. Manhwa lingers for a moment, watching him, and quietly promises they will meet again. Silence follows. Cheon's thoughts race as she worries about Ingyeol's temper and the trouble that may follow, though Ijin seems unconcerned. He casually declares that their tournament partnership is now decided. When she asks if he planned to enter anyway, he confirms it, but admits his plans have changed. As she realizes he also intends to enter the Heavenly Dragon tournament, she asks directly, and he confirms it. She then questions why he did not retaliate earlier, despite his obvious strength. Ijin answers seriously that he does not fight children. His honesty catches her off guard and leaves her speechless. Outside the inn, Ingyeol storms away while his companions try to console him. Though one mocks Cheon's choice, Ingyeol cannot forget the weight of Ijin's sword and vows revenge. Now at the Righteous Sword Sect, tensions rise as Cheon returns and announces that she will compete with Ijin, stunning everyone present as he steps forward and politely introduces himself. Ijin casually notices a porcelain vase displayed inside the room and calmly asks if it comes from the Fujian region. When he hears that it costs 150 nyang, he smiles lightly and comments that he could have bought it for 120 nyang if he had been there earlier. His relaxed tone only deepens the confusion in the room. The sect leader is still struggling to process the shocking news about Cheon's chosen partner, and his mind feels heavy as he studies Ijin more carefully. Hworyun, still stunned, directly asks Ijin which sect he belongs to. His answer comes without hesitation, as he says he belongs to no sect at all, and explains that his parents simply sell fruit near the human gate. The room falls into complete silence as disbelief spreads among everyone present. No one knows how to react to such an answer. The sect leader then shifts his gaze to the weapons Ijin carries and notices that he has both a sword and a blade. Curious, He asks if Ijin has mastered both paths. At first, the leader assumes it is only a bluff, but when Ijin calmly answers yes, the air grows heavier. Pressing further, the leader asks who taught him martial arts. When Ijin replies that his parents taught him, the disbelief turns into shock. Parents who sell fruit teaching martial arts feels impossible to them. Hwaryan quickly pulls Cheryon aside and whispers urgently that she must apologize to young Master Ingeol immediately. She insists that fighting alongside someone trained by fruit sellers is unacceptable and will only bring disaster to their family. Cheryon listens but remains silent, her thoughts tangled with doubt. Later that night, Cheryon walks along a quiet path, the darkness matching her uneasy heart. She reflects on her decision to bring Ijin back, believing it is necessary to protect him from Ingeol's anger. Turning toward Ijin, she asks if he cannot sleep. He admits that changing places often disturbs his rest, then casually adds that he has something important to take care of tonight, mentioning that a few people will be sent to the afterlife. His calm tone leaves her unsure whether he is serious or joking. Curious about him, Cheryon asks about his parents. She mentions hearing that his mother is beautiful and asks about his father. Ijin pauses before describing his father as a man who strictly follows rules, which often causes tension between them. He explains that his parents oppose his involvement in Janggu, not only out of fear for him, but for deeper reasons. Cheryon misunderstands, assuming they are simply worried parents like her own. Ijin then lightens the mood, joking that his vegetable dinner feels too light and asking if meat will be served tomorrow. Amused, Cheryon tells him to stop talking nonsense and advises him to leave after breakfast. Ijin looks at her calmly and asks if she is worried about him. Startled, she quickly turns away and denies it, claiming she only worries about the people he might meet. Elsewhere, in front of a building shrouded in red mist, thugs gather around a fire. One of them laughs while recounting how he killed a trembling young man seeking revenge for his father. Another jokes that at least they saved the boy from becoming an orphan. Their laughter suddenly stops when Ijin appears. They demand to know who he is and whether he understands where he stands. Ijin calmly replies that he knows this is the wandering market, the black market of Janggu. The thugs mock him, calling him a child and laughing at his boldness. Ijin warns them coldly that calling him a child again will be their last mistake. Angered, one thug draws his sword and charges. Before the blade reaches him, Ijin releases energy from his palm. The man collapses dead in an instant. Shock turns to terror as the others realize what happened. Declaring that this day marks an important step toward his future, Ijin attacks. He slaughters everyone, cutting through limbs and lives with ease, until he reaches the top floor. There, he confronts the Hog Emperor, calmly stating that he has come to buy the most expensive person in the room. The Hog Emperor watches closely and believes Ijin is already doomed the moment he steps inside the room. The maids begin their alluring, blissful dance, a sorcery so refined that it dulls reason and traps the mind without the victim even realizing it. Their movements flow smoothly, filled with charm and danger, and the air itself feels heavy with enchantment. When one maid finally strikes, Ijin calmly raises his hand and blocks her attack with ease, as if nothing unusual is happening. Watching their movements, he remarks that the dance is beautiful, but far from enough to kill him. He casually takes a hairpin from one of the maids and flicks it toward a pillar. The pin pierces the wood and shatters the lamp hanging above the Emperor's head. The Hog Emperor stiffens in shock, realizing that Ijin has completely seen through their soul-manipulating sorcery. The maids freeze, unable to believe that their technique has failed so completely. Ijin turns his gaze toward the women and calmly asks if any of them truly care for the Emperor. None of them answer, and their silence speaks louder than words. Understanding their situation, Ijin tells them that they are not here by choice and encourages them to leave. He assures them they no longer need to fear punishment and urges them to find the courage to live freely. Though terrified of defying their master, the women slowly gather their resolve and begin to move, inspired by his words. The Hog Emperor bursts into loud laughter and claps mockingly, praising Ijin's speech with heavy sarcasm. He declares that the women will not leave without having their limbs cut off. For the first time, Ijin's expression darkens. Stepping forward, he speaks coldly and promises that if the Emperor dares harm them, he will repay that cruelty by slicing him apart piece by piece. The murderous intent radiating from Ijin traps the Hog Emperor in place. Trembling under the pressure, he cannot move. The maids bow deeply in gratitude, thanking Ijin with tears in their eyes before fleeing. He gives them a large sum of money and reminds them to live well and treasure their freedom. Left behind, the Hog Emperor seethes with rage, furious that a person he sees as a brat has stripped him of his authority. Determined to regain control, he activates his body protection art. His body swells to 3 times its original size as he roars that Ijin will die by his technique. Ijin responds calmly, saying that growing bigger only means the Emperor must endure a greater beating. The Emperor charges forward, swinging his massive arms, but Ijin dodges effortlessly, appearing behind him again and again. Each missed strike fuels the Emperor's anger, while Ijin's calm smile only deepens the humiliation. Swearing to crush him, the Emperor gathers strength, but Ijin kicks his chest with overwhelming force, sending the massive body crashing through several walls. Coughing blood, the Emperor struggles to rise and gathers energy in his hand. Ijin spits in disgust, calling him a filthy pig for imprisoning innocent women. Flicking a small stone with terrifying precision, he shatters the Emperor's hand, ending the fight. Collapsing to his knees, the Emperor finally realizes he is facing a true master. Desperate, the Emperor compresses his body, shrinking while doubling his power. Before he can act, Ijin appears before him and strikes his stomach with devastating force, releasing energy that tears through his body. The Emperor collapses completely. Ijin stands over him and says he has paid for his life. As the Emperor dies, Ijin turns to a hunchback man nearby and calls him Manor Master Hua, then reveals his true name, Mutiol Hua. The man drops his disguise, revealing himself as the former patriarch of Steel Ghost Manor. Hearing his tragic past, Ijin acknowledges his pain and offers him purpose. Moved, Master Hua kneels and swears loyalty, and Ijin smiles, asks if they should begin, and while Master Hua still looks confused, flames rise quietly from both of Ijin's hands, lighting the room with a dangerous glow. Outside under the moonlight, a shadow lands softly on a tree branch, watching the building in silence, and wondering if the young master's battle has already ended. Minutes later, Master Hua's twisted body slowly returns to its original form, and the moment he realizes that the change he once believed was irreversible has been undone, shock and disbelief overwhelm him completely, because the great law should never allow such a reversal. His knees weaken, his voice trembles, and he sincerely thanks Ijin with deep emotion, unable to hide his gratitude. Ijin only smiles calmly and tells him not to thank him yet, explaining that from now on, hard work awaits him, and true gratitude should come after results are achieved, not before. As they speak, another man approaches with admiration clear in his eyes and respectfully greets Ijin as young master. This man is Muyong, Ijin's personal guard. Ijin glances at him and immediately mocks him, saying he needs to shave and is starting to look older than he should. Muyong pretends to be gravely wounded by the insult and coughs dramatically as if spitting blood, making the moment strangely light despite everything that has happened. Ijin then introduces Muyong to Master Hua, explaining that Muyong is his most trusted guard and will guide Master Hua through everything from now on. Without warning, Ijin announces that their original plan has changed and that their next move will begin with the Palm Essence Union. Muyong is visibly shocked and asks why, pointing out that Ijin once dismissed the Palm Essence Union as not worth their effort. He questions why Ijin is suddenly entering the Dragon and Phoenix tournament. Ijin answers casually that people's minds can change at any time, but Muyong scoffs and says that excuse sounds like something a shameless playboy would say. For a brief moment, Ijin is speechless. Then he laughs and accuses Muyong of being jealous of his popularity. Muyong firmly denies this and replies that having many admirers does not mean good fortune, because true luck lies in marrying the right woman. Ijin continues teasing him, while Master Hua watches the exchange in complete confusion, unable to understand their strange relationship. Morning arrives at the Palm Essence Union, where Charian and her father, Zhang, come to meet the young Master Ingyeol to smooth things over. At the gate, guards inform them that both the union leader and Ingyeol are away, and they do not know when they will return. Zhang politely asks them to pass along a message, admitting that he has come to apologize before matters worsen. As they prepare to leave, a man named Hyoki steps out, famous for his martial arts and known as the 8 Flying Hands. He greets Zhang warmly, explaining that he is visiting under the union leader's invitation and is surprised to meet him here. Zhang responds courteously, while noting that the Palm Essence Union surrounds itself with skilled people. Hyoki cheerfully suggests they drink together and insists on paying. Unbeknownst to them, Ingyeol watches from inside with a dark expression. At the Spring Breeze Inn, Hyoki pours bearbile wine and urges Zhang to drink, praising it as a rare delicacy. Zhang thanks him politely, and during their talk, Hyoki casually mentions that the Palm Essence Union leader seems quite angry. Alarmed, Zhang asks him to help mediate if possible, but Hyoki laughs and dismisses it as a minor issue between children. At the same time, Sharyun thinks about how she prepared food for Ijin that morning, only to be told by a maid that he left without saying anything. Suddenly, Hyoki panics, mutters that he forgot something urgent, and runs out of the inn, leaving Jong stunned. Moments later, the attendant brings the bill, revealing an outrageous cost, with the wine alone priced at 120 nyang. Jong sighs and says he will return the next day to pay, but the attendant coldly refuses credit and states that Sharyun can remain as collateral. When Jong protests angrily, the attendant suggests Sharyun could entertain guests if payment is not made, making it clear this is no ordinary inn. Jong notices the guards nearby and realizes they are stronger than him. At that moment, Ijin enters casually holding a bottle of wine. Sharyun asks why he is here, and Ijin simply says he came to drink. He places the bottle down and calmly remarks that the wine tastes strange, hinting that something has been added. As the attendant grows nervous, Ijin loudly declares that the bear bile wine is fake, drawing a crowd. He proposes a wager, saying if the wine is fake, he will take everything earned today, and if he is wrong, he will offer his own gallbladder. He leads everyone to a hidden storehouse, shatters the door with his bare hands, and reveals the jar used to brew the wine. When the attendant attacks him with a hidden needle, Ijin blocks it with the jar, which shatters, spilling wine filled with writhing insects. Smiling coldly, Ijin asks the crowd if anyone still wants to drink. Ijin holds up a small cup and repeats his offer to let someone taste the wine. The crowd recoils in disgust at the wriggling insects that spill from the broken jar. Some mutter refusals, others nervously inspect their own cups, horrified at the thought of having consumed the insects. Ijin frowns at the lack of takers, saying that someone must confirm his claim. A voice from the back shouts that he is crazy, and that bear bile wine could not involve such creatures. Ijin ignores the interruption and lifts one insect close to his face. He explains it is called a black painted insect, named for the artistic pattern on its back. A skeptic asks what importance it holds. Ijin reveals that the insect's secretions taste like bear bile, so similar that ordinary people cannot tell the difference. Realizing that they had unknowingly consumed insect secretions, the crowd reacts with panic and outrage. At that moment, a large, imposing man enters. His presence silences the crowd immediately. He is Yang In-myung, leader of the Southern Peak Alliance, a powerful figure who rose to prominence after the 13-year Great Orthodox Demonic War. His respect commands attention, and even the madam of the inn trembles before him. In-myung and his subordinates scrutinize Ijin, asking how he knows about the black-painted insect, supposedly found only in southern regions. Calmly, Ijin explains he has traveled widely since his youth. The elder notes Ijin's vast knowledge and asks his identity. Ijin smiles and introduces himself as the eldest son of drifting clouds and flowing water, the best fruit merchants near the outskirts. The elder and his servants are taken aback, not expecting such a humble background. After a moment, In-myung laughs heartily, admiring Ijion's cleverness in hiding his true identity. Meanwhile, Ijin continues offering the wine to anyone brave enough. One subordinate, Hui Mak, the White Tiger Squad leader, watches closely and decides to taste it with the elder's approval. After sipping, Hui Mak grimaces and exclaims that it is exactly the same as the wine served earlier. The crowd erupts in horror, realizing they have been deceived. The madam protests, claiming she is innocent, but the crowd demands justice. Guards hesitate, intimidated by In-myung and Hui Mak, while the madam threatens them with dire consequences. Chaos spreads, but Ijin stays calm. Jong bows deeply in gratitude, acknowledging that without Ijin, they would be in serious trouble. Ijin casually says no one else could have managed such a feat, and jokes that now he expects to be treated as their savior. In-myung observes Ijin intently, and Hui Mak notes that the young man is intriguing. In-myung admits that Ijin is more than just interesting. Seeing him awakens a long-forgotten feeling of pleasure, excitement, desperation, and ambition, much like when he first conquered the Southern Peak Alliance. Even with his experience, In-myung cannot explain why Ijin evokes such a reaction, leaving Hui Mak astonished. Later that night, a man runs frantically through the forest, clothes soaked in blood. He mutters about the urgency of alerting others. Suddenly, a shadow appears beside him. Instinctively, he reaches for his sword, but the figure catches up. The bloodied man recognizes the pursuer's badge from the Northern Heaven Supreme family. Urgently, he explains that both the Dragon and Phoenix tournament and the Heavenly Dragon tournament must be cancelled. A conspiracy unfolds, orchestrated by the Flying Swallowtail Association. Before they can act, other footsteps approach, and the bloodied man devises a plan to act as bait, while the pursuer escapes to deliver the warning. The pursuer suddenly betrays him. In one swift motion, the man's neck is sliced, blood spraying across the forest floor. Calmly, the pursuer remarks that their real enemies are not from the Flying Swallow Association, but the Flying Swallowtail Association. Nearby, butterflies flutter, and a woman perched on a branch watches the scene. She is the leader, holding a fan with a gleam in her eyes. The 16th butterfly kneels before her, reporting that the 14th butterfly already handled the others. She smiles and declares that the Dragon and Phoenix tournament will be a nightmare. Elsewhere, under the moonlight, Ijin and Cherian walk together. They stop briefly, and Cherian thanks him for helping earlier, recalling an incident where the young master provoked him. She reflects on how absurd it is to enter the Dragon and Phoenix tournament with such a volatile person. Ijin encourages her to join the tournament with him, promising victory. Skeptical but determined to prove others wrong, Cherian agrees. They resolve to do their best, walking under the pale moonlight. Suddenly, Hyoki reappears, taunting Ijin. He confirms a kill order on both of them. Hyoki's wide grin and menacing aura frighten Cherian. She grips her sword and asks if Ijin has faced real combat before. Surprisingly, Ijin hides behind her, pretending to seek protection, making the situation even more tense. The man confronting them reveals himself as a master of palm techniques, so skilled that his hands appear to multiply into 8, earning him the title 8 Flying Hands. Once a hero with dreams of a better Jianghu, Hyoki abandoned his ideals, disillusioned by the growing prosperity of villains, and now exists as one himself, casting aside the line between good and evil. He looms ominously before the two young martial artists, and Cherian's body trembles at the overwhelming gap in skill and experience that seems as vast as heaven and earth. Sensing her fear, Ijin leans close and instructs her to draw her sword. She complies, unsheathing her blade with determination, vowing not to stand idly by while the threat looms. The tense standoff unfolds with Hyoki smirking, mocking her eagerness to die, before activating his palm techniques and lunging at her with lethal speed. Both Ijion and Cherian dodge, though she is struck by his incredible velocity and loses balance while trying to use her movement technique, crashing against a tree trunk. As she falls, Hyoki launches another palm strike, narrowly avoided, shattering the tree with the force of his blow. And Cherian realizes this is nothing like her training, fear overwhelming her as death seems imminent. Ijin notices her panic and calmly advises her to stop relying on the movement technique and instead let her body flow naturally with her sword, telling her to focus on the weapon first, then the feet, and to let herself move freely. She centers herself, repeating his words, and her mind clears as she begins to concentrate fully, her stance becoming fluid. Hyoki sneers at Ijin, mocking him for hiding behind a woman, and Cherian seizes the distraction to strike, though he easily deflects her attacks with minimal effort. Desperation fuels her strikes, each stronger than the last, but he parries effortlessly, mocking her attempts and lunging for her face with a palm strike. She ducks and retreats, blood trickling from her shoulder, and Ijin questions her swordplay, noting her usually heavy movements have become delicate. Confused, Cherian reflects on his criticism, considering whether the Scarlet Trace training she has relied on might have flaws, and she decides to follow his advice, allowing her movements to flow like water. Her body becomes graceful and seamless, and with a single precise strike, she slices a few strands of Hyoki's hair, gaining confidence. Agitated, Hyoki channels more power into his palm techniques, striking with ferocity, blowing Cherian back and disarming her, sending blood from her mouth as she fails to defend. He screams his intent to end the fight, eyes glowing with malice, but suddenly she disappears, and he mutters in confusion, questioning her sudden vanishing. A voice behind him causes him to turn, and he sees Ijin airborne, holding Cherian. Bathed in moonlight, Ijin radiates an aura of unfathomable power and explains he used a skill akin to Void Step, called Falling Blossom Step from the Heavenly Thunder Steps, a martial art passed down by his father, rarely revealed to outsiders. Hyoki trembles, sinking to his knees, acknowledging mastery of such a secretive art, utterly stunned. Ijin gently sets Cherian near a tree and tells her about his parents' love story, confessing that he had never believed in love at first sight until that moment. Shaking, Hyoki stammers, struggling to comprehend how someone so young could master the reverse flow of such a wondrous martial art. With a single devastating punch, Ijin crushes Hyoki's skull, sending him crashing through a tree and slamming hard into the ground, blood spattering as he gasps and coughs, realizing the terrifying truth of Ijin's overwhelming power. Hyoki, begging for mercy, hears Ijin's cold detachment as he reflects on his father's idealistic teachings and contrasts them with his mother's advice to never show leniency. Darkening, Ijin unsheathes his blade, the cloth wrapping tearing away to reveal the weapon bit by bit, its guard engraved with a demon skull. flames erupting as he wields the infamous Northern Hellblade. Demonic spirits surge from the air like ghostly whales, charging toward Hyoki, whose body freezes in terror, unable to escape. In an instant, Ijin's swing shreds him into hundreds of pieces before comprehension can even occur, leaving Hyoki in fragments and blood pooling across the ground. Ijin stares coldly at the lifeless remains, crimson eyes burning with intensity, muttering that his father's path is far too boring to follow. Ijin hums a soft and sad tune as he walks forward, and the melody sounds like a song about crossroads, wandering paths, and unknown futures waiting beyond a windy cliff. And in his mind he imagines singing not to people, but to a single lonely flower that listens in silence. While he is lost in the tune, Cheryon slowly wakes up, her eyelashes trembling as her eyes open little by little. When Ijin feels her shift, he casually asks if she is finally awake. Confused and dizzy, Cheryon soon realizes that she is resting on his back, and panic makes her ask him to put her down immediately, but he calmly refuses and says her body is still injured and she should not walk yet. Her head aches as she tries to remember what happened earlier, but her thoughts remain blurry. With a teasing voice, Ijin explains that the man she struck without seeing properly ended up being struck down by his sword instead. As the pieces fall into place, Cheryon's face turns pale and her breath grows uneven because she understands that someone died because of her actions. Seeing her reaction, Ijin grins mischievously and adds that a man stabbed straight through the heart cannot possibly still be alive, clearly enjoying how frightened she looks. Her hands shake as she grips his shoulders more tightly, but he suddenly reassures her and tells her there is no reason to feel guilty because the man deserved his end. He speaks more seriously then and says that drawing a sword without the resolve to kill is an insult to the blade itself. Cheryon listens in silence, still unsure what to think, because Ijin remains a mystery to her, acting carefree and playful while hiding a dangerous and ruthless side beneath his smile. As they continue walking, Ijin talks cheerfully about the future and mentions the Dragon and Phoenix tournament and also the Heavenly Dragon Grand Tournament, and his tone carries strong confidence as he hints that he plans to conquer the world someday. Cheryon, still clinging to his back, looks at his face from behind, studying his expression as she senses that their lives are now tightly connected, and the road ahead feels uncertain and unpredictable. Far away on another part of the continent, Hwayong, Isang, and Muak sit together in deep discussion. Hwayong carries twin blades that release an ominous and heavy aura, while Isang holds a sword that looks plain, yet radiates power equal to hers. Their sharp eyes focus on the Muak, as one elder asks whether he bought what they requested. Muak responds by opening a wooden box and revealing 6 dumplings inside. Hwayong takes a bite, her expression softening, as she comments that their slow journey reminds her of her youth. Isang groans in discomfort and complains about her constant habit of reliving the past. She ignores him and recalls a dramatic moment when he once drew his sword in battle, and her voice grows low as vivid memories surface, showing the two of them clashing fiercely long ago. Her face becomes serious as the memory darkens, and Isang rubs his head in frustration, regretting his reckless younger days. Muak laughs so hard that he nearly spits out his drink. When the laughter fades, the middle-aged man asks about the young master they mentioned before. Hwayong smiles warmly as she speaks of Ijin's father, while Isang chuckles beside her. They reflect on how fast Ijin has grown and note that he is now preparing to participate in the Dragon and Phoenix tournament. Along with their pride, they also feel worry, knowing many young participants are bound to get hurt. Hwayong laughs loudly at the thought, while Isang explains that Ijin usually avoids harming children unless they truly deserve punishment. Meanwhile, Ingil's expression darkens as he remarks that the lunatic is still alive. A servant confirms this and reports that Ijin left the righteous sword sect together with Carrion. Ingil reacts with disbelief and asks what happened to the assassin he hired. The servant replies that Hyoki was a great warrior, but never returned after leaving the previous night. Fear creeps into Ingil's face as he wonders where Hyoki went and whether he could truly be dead. He laughs loudly in denial, refusing to believe Ijin could defeat such a master. Yet deep inside, he becomes determined to uncover the truth. The day of the Dragon and Phoenix tournament finally arrives, and firecrackers explode across the sky while colorful banners line the streets and guards stand watch everywhere. The grand arena rises like a massive pit prepared for battle as competitors arrive, with male fighters called dragons and female fighters called phoenixes. The crowd erupts in excitement as famous figures appear, including Hagi Lim with Sama and Yang with Seol, drawing cheers and admiration. Amid the noise, Ijin raises his hand with calm confidence, declaring he will win, and while the crowd reacts with confusion, some mock him and others quietly envy his indifference. He casually comments on the lavish decorations, guessing the Northern Heaven Supreme family profits greatly, which makes Cheryon smile as she softly encourages him to do their best together, and he answers with an easy smile of his own. When the 8 teams gather, the referee orders them to wait without touching anything, and Ijin smirks, taking it as an invitation rather than a warning, though he offers Cheryon no explanation. Inside the room, tension builds as others speculate about the trial, while Ijin remains distracted by a painting, and when the match officially begins, he draws Cheryon closer and asks if she notices what is strange, leading her to study the artwork again until she finally senses that something about it is wrong. The warriors in the painting appear to be locked in fierce battle, yet when Cheryon looks more closely, she realizes that none of them are truly focused on fighting each other, because all their eyes are fixed on a single glowing incense burner held by one figure at the center. This realization deepens when she slowly connects the image to the real incense burner placed on the table inside the room, positioned exactly the same way as in the painting. At the same time, she remembers the strict warning given earlier, that touching anything inside the room would lead to immediate disqualification. Around them, the examiners stand silently and watch every participant with sharp eyes, making sure no one breaks the rules, even by mistake. Feeling uneasy, Cheryon quietly warns Ijin to be careful as she notices his hand moving closer and closer to the incense burner. Her concern grows, but before she can stop him, a loud sound echoes through the room as Ijin grabs the burner without hesitation. The entire hall falls into sudden silence, and every participant turns to stare at him in shock. Among them, a man holding a red sword glares at Ijin, his face filled with disbelief and irritation. Ijin, however, remains completely calm as he examines the burner and tilts it slightly, revealing words carved into its base. He casually shows it to Cheryon and points out the inscription that reads Dragon and Phoenix Hall. Confused, Cheryon asks what that means, and Ijin explains that the match begins the moment they enter the room and that the first stage has already started. Behind them, one participant trembles and mutters incoherently as Ijin and Cheryon prepare to move on. Suddenly, a loud voice interrupts them, belonging to the man with the red sword, who steps forward while pointing at Ijin and Cheryon. Accompanied by a young girl, he accuses them of ignoring the rules and behaving recklessly, speaking in a self-righteous tone as if he owns the place. He directs his anger toward Ijin and claims that such actions could endanger everyone present, demanding that Ijin put the incense burner down immediately. Ijin listens patiently and then responds calmly, saying that something seems seriously wrong with the man and asking why someone so young chooses to live only by rigid rules. Cheryon observes quietly and notices that the man looks to be about their age. Ijin continues speaking and encourages him to think differently and challenge the existing order instead of blindly following it. The man, however, dismisses Ijin's words as childish nonsense, and his anger only grows stronger. He raises his voice and rambles on while glancing at the emotionless instructors nearby. Then a smug smile spreads across his face as he decides to subdue Ijin, believing it will earn him recognition. Declaring that there is no rule against drawing his sword, he unsheathes his blade and threatens Ijin. Sensing danger, the young girl beside him tries to calm him down, but he ignores her and assures her that he only intends to teach Ijin a lesson. Before he can take a single step forward, a sudden force slams his sword back into its scabbard. Ijin moves so fast that the man has no time to react. Stepping closer, Ijin releases a quiet but overwhelming pressure that crushes the man's confidence instantly. Terror spreads across the man's face as he realizes the vast difference in their strength. Ijin's ominous smile appears once more, carrying the promise of destruction. Leaning in, Ijin tells him to stop embarrassing himself and to listen to his little sister instead. The man begins to sweat heavily, unable to move under Ijin's presence. As the onlookers watch in silence, the young girl approaches her brother and gently touches his wrist, softly scolding him for pointing his sword so carelessly at someone he calls powerless. Her words confuse him, and he wonders who the powerless one truly is. Bowing her head, the girl apologizes to Ijin for their behavior. Appearing satisfied, Ijin exhales and smiles before placing the incense burner back onto the table. He then calls Cheryon and tells her to follow him. While the girl seems unaware of how serious the situation was, Cheryon feels deeply unsettled, having seen Ijin's dangerous side again. A guard suddenly warns Ijin that leaving the room without permission will result in elimination, but Ijin responds casually and accepts the condition without concern. As he walks away, the remaining participants stare in disbelief. Turning back briefly, Ijin offers the man and his sister a chance to reach the second gate if they choose to follow him. The brother clenches his teeth and reminds Ijin of the disqualification rule, but Ijin only chuckles and exits without hesitation. Ijin and Cheryon finally arrive at the Dragon and Phoenix Hall, and Cheryon, who once doubted its existence, admits in awe that the hall is real. Ijin pulls open the heavy doors and comments that the riddle is far more difficult than it appears, and when Cheryon guesses that only a handful of people could have solved it, her hope collapses the moment she sees hundreds of pairs already gathered inside. Shocked, she looks around in disbelief, unable to understand how so many participants managed to pass the test, and voices her confusion. Ijin calmly scans the crowd and points out the presence of powerful figures, including successors from major factions such as the Southern Peak Alliance, explaining that the Orthodox powers would never ignore something this important. When Cheryon asks if he means corruption, Ijin gestures toward the nobles and suggests the answer was likely shared only among influential clans. His gaze then lands on Ingyal, and with mild amusement he mutters that the man is an idiot, while Cheryon stiffens as the seriousness of the situation sinks in. Ingyal soon notices Ijin and feels uneasy, his mind racing as he wonders whether Ijin has powerful backing or if the assassin he hired has failed him. When he glances at his sister, he sees her staring at Ijin with open admiration, which makes him turn away in frustration, anger boiling beneath the surface. Before tensions can rise further, a clear bell rings through the hall, instantly silencing the crowd. A robed man steps forward, his presence commanding immediate respect, and he introduces himself as Bong Su-chan, an elder of the Northern Heaven Supreme family and the organizer of the tournament. He congratulates everyone for passing the first gate, sending excitement through the hall, and even Cheryon looks at Ijin with renewed admiration, acknowledging that his earlier insight was correct, until the moment is abruptly broken by the furious shout of the young man who had previously clashed with Ijin. The brother and sister are stopped by the guards at the exit, and their situation quickly draws attention when the brother raises his voice and loudly protests, claiming that the test is unfair from the beginning. He points straight at Ijin and accuses him of clearly breaking the rules by touching the incense burner, insisting that such behavior should result in immediate elimination. However, many people in the crowd do not agree with him because the outcome of the test feels exactly as the tournament intends it to be. Until now, the examiner remains silent, but suddenly his sharp voice explodes through the hall and instantly silences everyone. With a cold and scornful glare, he scolds the complainers and declares that the affairs of the DONGHUA are never simple or gentle matters. The examiner reminds everyone that in the DONGHUA, danger exists everywhere, and constant vigilance is not a choice but a necessity. His words are harsh and unforgiving as he explains that there will be no one to complain to if an assassin suddenly takes their life. He mocks the idea of crying to the ruler of hell for justice after death, making it clear that weakness and complaints have no place in this world. His lesson is cruel but honest, and the atmosphere grows heavy as the eliminated participants lower their heads in silence. Meanwhile, Ijin turns his attention to Cheryon, who quietly asks how he knew the incense burner was the key to the first gate. She wonders if it was just coincidence or luck. Ijin gently corrects her and says that there are no coincidences in the DONGHUA. Hearing this, Cheryon reflects deeply and begins to understand how dangerous this world truly is and how easily she might have failed without Ijin guiding her. Nearby, the young brother and sister sit together in tears, comforting each other as the girl says that they only followed the instructions they were given. The contrast between their obedience and the tournament's merciless rules highlights just how unforgiving the DONGHUA can be. Cheryon cannot help but think that she could have ended up the same way if she had been alone. As the siblings prepare to leave, the examiner smiles darkly and announces that those eliminated should consider themselves fortunate, because the Dragon and Phoenix tournament is about to turn into something far worse than they can imagine. He warns that what lies ahead will resemble hell itself. As evening arrives, the atmosphere shifts, and Ijin casually offers a skewer of grilled meat to someone nearby, urging her to take a bite. The person eagerly accepts and takes a mouthful, immediately lighting up with delight. It is Cheryon's youngest sister, Suryeon, who happily exclaims that the food is incredibly delicious. Ijin grins proudly and says that even the simplest meat becomes extraordinary when he grills it. He explains that while his mother is talented at almost everything, cooking is her one weakness, so he is forced to learn how to cook properly to avoid eating bland meals. To him, enjoying good food, alcohol, and women is what makes life truly rich and worth living. Cheryon notices how lively and energetic her sister looks, which feels strange compared to her usual fragile state. It is revealed that Suryeon is once a healthy child, until she suddenly falls ill at the age of 7, and despite countless treatments by skilled physicians, no cause or cure is ever found. Cheryon wonders quietly if her sister will ever recover, as her condition only seems to worsen with time. Their clan leader watches his daughter's rare excitement with mixed emotions and sincerely thanks Ijin for making the day special for her. He also expresses gratitude for helping Cheryon pass the first round of the tournament. Ijin responds confidently and assures him that he can rely on him for the second round as well. Meanwhile, Cheryon now begins to see Ijin differently and recognizes that this young man is far from ordinary. Quietly, she wonders who Ijin truly is. Later that night, Ijin walks alone across a field covered in flowers, his steps calm and steady, while his thoughts wander freely. Suddenly, a strange sensation reaches him, followed by the ground shaking violently. Rocks rise into the air as the peaceful field transforms into a barren and harsh land, meant only for powerful martial artists. Instead of fear, Ijin smiles and remarks that the sight looks incredible. In front of him stands Master Hua, the Manor Master, along with Mu Yong. Master Hua explains that this transformation comes from activating the 9 Palaces' exquisite flower formation, the weakest of the Manor's 3 formations. He goes on to describe the 5 Elements and 7 Stars formation and the final Celestial King of Light formation, which even a martial master cannot escape without dismantling it. Ijin acknowledges the strength of the formations, but calmly corrects Master Hua, stating that some martial arts can break formations without dismantling them. Shocked, Master Hua listens as Ijin confidently says that one day he will understand. As the night continues, Mu Yong informs Ijin about a new mechanism called the 7-Step Path to the Grim Reaper, marking another step toward creating the strongest sect in the DONGHUA. Gazing into the night, Ijin wonders aloud if he can claim all the light for himself, and Mu Yong replies that no one in the DONGHUA is more suited for that than him. In the crowded marketplace, Ijin and Cheryon walk side by side as people pass them from every direction. Curious about where they are going, Cheryon asks him about their destination. Ijin answers calmly that he plans to buy her a real weapon. His words confuse her, and she asks what he means by that. Ijin explains that he has noticed her poor judgment when choosing weapons in the past, because she often focuses on appearance and price instead of usefulness. He remembers how she once almost spent all her pocket money on something flashy and impractical, and her careless choices finally push him to intervene. With firm determination, he tells her they are going to a trustworthy place that sells proper weapons. They soon arrive at their destination, where lantern light reveals walls covered with countless spears, each designed for a different handling style. A stern man wearing a blacksmith's robe stands nearby, and his intimidating presence fills the room. Cheryon feels uneasy as she looks around at the hundreds of weapons and senses that she does not belong there. She recalls that Ijin once said he had never been to Wuhan, which makes her wonder how he knows about the Dark Arms Merchant, a hidden place that deals in rare and dangerous weapons. Ijin calmly studies the room before asking the merchant if everything on display is all they have. The merchant looks closely at Ijin and notices the strange aura coming from his blades. With a knowing smile, he says that he has something special for distinguished guests. The merchant opens a box and reveals a frozen jade dagger, and cold air spreads through the room as its frosty aura pulses with power. Ijin examines the dagger carefully and mutters to himself, while Cheryon gasps in awe at its beauty. Her amazement quickly turns into shock when she hears the price, which is 15,000 nang. The number leaves her more stunned than even facing death ever has. Ijin, completely unfazed, asks the merchant if he can receive a bonus with the purchase. Cheryon is speechless at his casual request. The merchant, intrigued, asks what kind of bonus he wants, and Ijin suggests choosing another item from the shop. Realizing that Ijin truly understands the value of the dagger, the merchant grows even more curious and carefully considers his request. When Ijin makes his selection, the merchant's eyes widen in shock as he recognizes the importance of the chosen item. Cheryon openly displays her surprise, unable to hide her reaction. The merchant laughs loudly and then asks for Ijin's name. After hearing it, he admits that he does not recognize the name and wonders how someone so young can identify such rare weapons, suspecting that Ijin must have an extraordinary background. As his thoughts wander, he speculates about the origin of Ijin's blades and grins, asking whether Ijin is their true master and if they will meet again. Ijin responds with a dark look before thanking him for the bonus, and both men share a grin as equals, leaving Cheryon completely confused by their exchange. Later, Ijin washes something while Cheryon vents her frustration about him spending 15,000 nang on a dagger. She grows even more irritated when she remembers that he also asked for a pair of old gloves as a bonus. Clutching her head, she mutters that Ijin must be a fool, a madman, or both, and finally settles on calling him a crazy fool. Curious, she asks where he got so much money and jokingly suggests that he might be the son of a wealthy family or involved in something suspicious. Tired of her guessing, Ijin asks her to give him her hand. When she tries to pull away, he explains that the gloves might help improve her martial arts, especially since she is stuck at the 7 stars level. Shocked that he knows her rank, she questions him, but he simply says there is very little about her that he does not know. Still doubtful, Cherion asks if the gloves will really help or if he is just teasing her. Ijin reassures her and tells her to respect even the smallest objects because everything carries its own unique energy. He guides her to sense it, and mesmerized by his words, she allows him to place the glove on her hand. The glove slowly turns transparent and begins releasing mysterious energy, creating gusts of wind around her. As the power intensifies, Cherion stares in amazement while the glove absorbs surrounding energy and glows bright yellow. She realizes that the gloves are far from ordinary. Ijin smiles with satisfaction and says the glove has accepted her, praising her talent. Confused, Cherion asks what acceptance means and notices the word wind engraved on her hand. Ijin explains that she should greet the wind god and reveals that he holds the second glove. When the two gloves come close, they resonate with each other, although her weak internal energy currently limits their full power. He explains that the gloves once belonged to the wind god, the greatest martial master of the DONGHUA from over 300 years ago, making them priceless treasures. Cherion wonders why such an item was hidden in the Dark Arms merchant's shop, and Ijin suggests the merchant was waiting for someone who could recognize its true value. As rain begins to fall and the next day arrives, preparations for the Dragon and Phoenix tournament continue. Ijin and Cherion sit together as the examiner announces the second round, the test of striding, and Ijin quietly remarks that this challenge will not be easy at all. Rain covers the pavilion as the second round of the Dragon and Phoenix tournament begins, and everyone turns their attention to the successor of the Northern Heaven Supreme family, Lim, who steps forward first without hesitation. The crowd whispers in surprise at his confidence, yet no one truly doubts him, because his name alone carries weight and respect. Ijin and Cherion watch carefully, wondering what kind of movement art he will use, and Ijin looks pleased by the bold decision, calmly asking Cherion what she thinks. The young master places his feet firmly on the engraved stone floor, his body steady and filled with quiet power, and before he even moves, the crowd already feels the pressure of his presence. Women gaze at him in admiration, while men murmur in awe, and in the next moment, he moves forward with perfect balance and speed, crossing the distance in seconds, as if the rain itself cannot slow him. Cherion stares in amazement at his speed, while Ijin looks slightly disappointed, though even the elders whisper praise, saying this is the kind of technique expected from the Northern Heaven heir. His partner, Lady Sama, struggles to keep up, but does not give up, and when the young master reaches the end, he lands lightly with his hands behind his back, as if the trial were nothing, causing loud applause to echo through the pavilion. Only a young man from the Southern Peak Alliance looks unhappy, while the woman beside him watches with interest. As the noise fades, Ijin turns to Cherion, who admits she feels nervous and honestly asks if they can pass this test. Ijin smiles and answers simply that they cannot, shocking her into silence before adjusting his weapons and telling her they need to practice instead of watching. When she hesitates, he explains that most people will fail because they try to copy the Northern Heaven movement, but this test requires finding one's own way, not walking someone else's path. His voice is serious as rain falls around them, and without waiting, he leads her away. They arrive at a quiet courtyard hidden from the crowd, and Ijin says this place is perfect before telling Cherion to show him the Scarlet Trace sword art. He explains that her 7 stars realm is not enough to pass, and she questions how he can be so confident after seeing it only once, wondering if he is already a master. Standing calmly in the rain with his sword on his back, Ijin says he is skilled enough to teach her, leaving her speechless. After a short pause, she draws her sword and begins, even though she does not fully understand. Her blade shines under the rain as she moves with grace, while Ijin watches closely, matching her rhythm with sharp eyes. When she finishes, he stops her and tells her to slow one movement by half a breath, and when she follows his advice, she feels her sword flow change instantly, her energy growing stronger than before. Ijin nods in approval as he continues correcting her posture, footwork, and timing, and with each word, her technique becomes sharper and more complete. When the rain finally stops, Cherion stands still, trembling as she realizes her sword art feels entirely different, and Ijin smiles as he tells her she has reached the 9 stars realm. Shock fills her eyes as she asks if martial arts mean nothing to him, unable to understand his level of skill. Elsewhere, Ijin's guard Moyoung stands in the forest as 3 elders appear, teasing him about his unshaven face before heading toward the tournament hall. Soon after, the announcer calls the next challengers, and the crowd turns in surprise as Aijin introduces himself as Aijin of Drifting Clouds and Flowing Water, while Cheryon follows as a disciple of the Righteous Sword Sect. Aijin smiles at her and says, "This round should be easy now," then leaps forward happily, shouting the name of their plan as Cheryon follows behind, shaking her head with a small smile. Under the clearing skies, the two move smoothly along the stone pavement, and their balanced steps and steady speed capture the attention of everyone watching. Aijin glances at Cheryon while still moving and casually points out that she has clearly improved, and she answers with a light and relaxed smile, openly showing her gratitude as she admits that his guidance plays a major role in her progress. As Cheryon continues forward, a strange lightness spreads through her body, as if she is dancing for the very first time, and she quietly marvels at the harmony she now feels between her mind and her movements. Noticing her smooth flow, Aijin explains while walking beside her that the eyes allow the mind to understand principles, and the body then turns those principles into action, and he calmly says that this is the true essence of martial arts. Cheryon repeats her words in her mind as she lands gently, surprised by how effortless everything feels, and when she looks down, she realizes that they have already reached the end of the stage. Aijin finishes beside her with the same calm composure, a satisfied smile resting on his face as they stand together. Cheryon turns toward him and admits in disbelief that she does not even remember how she reached the end, and Aijin simply smiles and lightly remarks that their execution of Operation Dragon and Phoenix Shine Together is quite impressive. Her expression softens as his words sink in, and soon the examiner announces that they have passed the second round of the Dragon and Phoenix tournament. Outside the hall, the streets fill with noise as people excitedly talk about martial arts and the ongoing tournament, and within the lively crowd, Aijin walks with steady purpose, his focus sharp and unwavering. He soon reaches a quiet place where three elders wait, and when he meets their eyes, his usual cold expression softens into a youthful smile. Spreading his arms wide, he approaches Hwayong with exaggerated warmth and happily calls her his grandmother, but before he can hug her, she lifts her scythe and lightly cuts his forehead to stop him. She sneers and calls him a disgusting lunatic, mocking the idea that he could be her real grandson, while the other elders laugh and tease him for his shameless behavior, creating a strangely cheerful mood. Aijin wipes the blood away and complaining about her cold treatment, and Hwayong shakes her head before sharply asking what he plans to do after making such noise about forming a martial sect. His smile fades as he calmly says that he plans to devour the Jianghu, and Hwayong grows serious as she warns him about the four hegemons, the 9 great sects, the 4 major clans, and the divine cult that rivals even the Orthodox Alliance. The mention of the divine cult briefly darkens the air, but Aijin quickly dismisses it, saying he will not worry about what has not yet happened, and the tension fades as the elders sigh. He then asks Muyong to escort them, and when Muyong asks where he is going, Aijin replies with a sly smile that he needs to deal with Engrostek monstrosity. The scene shifts to towering cliffs and deep valleys, and Cheryon gasps in disbelief as she takes in the sight before her. Aijin grins and assures her that he is not joking, pointing to the life and death bridge hanging over a vast chasm, old and weathered, swaying gently in the wind. Cheryon turns pale and admits that she cannot cross it, but Aijin calmly says she will regret it if she does not, then steps onto the bridge as if walking on solid ground. She panics and warns him to be careful, but he calmly explains that fear separates novices from experts, because to an expert, the bridge feels no different from flat land. His words steady her resolve, and though embarrassed, she steps forward, gripping the ropes tightly and pushing herself onward. When she reaches the middle, relief fills her chest, but Aijin casually mentions that the wind often blows here, and a powerful gust suddenly strikes. The bridge swings violently, and while Aijin stands firm, Cheryon loses her balance and is lifted into the air, her body frozen in terror. His voice orders her to think of the bridge as solid ground, and as fear overwhelms her, his crimson eyes glow and a dark aura reaches out, gently pulling her back to safety. Her legs tremble when she lands, and she cannot move until he softly confesses that he likes her, and without realizing it, she crosses the bridge, only to realize later that he is teasing her. Enraged, she punches the bridge post, but a stern monk interrupts, and Aijin coldly calls him Grostek monstrosity. In front of a quiet Buddhist statue, the monk sits nearby with one hand pressed to his head, clearly troubled, and he complains loudly about how Buddha ignores his suffering, while Aijin and Cheryon sit across from him in silence. As he speaks, he angrily tears pieces of a strange mask from his face and curses the monster who was sent to torment him in this place, only to reveal moments later that the monster he means is none other than Aijin himself. Cherion studies Ijin with curiosity, then looks back at the monk and asks who he really is, prompting Ijin to casually describe him as a fake monk, a con artist, a thief, and someone with 8 completely disreputable trades. Although Ijin speaks with a smirk, Cherion freezes when she hears the number 8, and her eyes widen as realization dawns on her, causing her to blurt out that this man must be the infamous Eightfold Charmer. The monk scoffs and rips away the rest of the mask, revealing his true face and shocking everyone present, then corrects her with clear irritation by declaring that his true name is the Eightfold Grostek Monstrosity. He mutters bitterly about foolish young women and complains that none of them understand the rules of the Jianghu. But before he can continue, Ijin lightly smacks him on the head and cheerfully announces that the monk is actually his disciple, as the monk lost a bet to him and agreed to become his disciple as punishment. Ijin explains that it began with a simple game of checkers, escalated into accusations of cheating, then turned into a fake duel, and finally a real fight, all of which the monk lost. The monk fumes and insists that Ijin must have used dirty tricks or poison, which makes Cherion quietly think that poison and trickery are actually the monk's specialties, yet he still lost. With a playful smile, Ijin changes the subject and says that he has a request, admitting that while the monk is a shameless quack, his skills can still be useful. He asks him to treat a patient. He offers to cancel their bet entirely if the monk agrees to help, and the monk's attitude instantly changes as his eyes light up, and he eagerly agrees, happy to end their twisted relationship. As they prepare to leave, Cherion asks who the patient is, and although Ijin only smiles without answering, the truth soon becomes clear when they arrive. The patient is her younger sister, Suryeon. Grostek Monstrosity carefully examines Suryeon. After a long pause, Ijin politely asks for the diagnosis, and for once the monk speaks seriously as he explains that Suryeon was stung by a rare venomous insect known as a blood bee. She must drink a special medicine for 15 days, eat properly, and exercise regularly, and if she follows this, she will fully recover within a year. Suryeon's parents break down in relief as hope finally enters their hearts. Overcome with emotion, Suryeon's father kneels and thanks the monk repeatedly, calling him the Great Grostek Monstrosity. Charion's mother feels emotions she never allowed herself to feel before, as her sister's mother thanks Ijin sincerely and promises to repay him no matter the cost. Ijin gently dismisses their gratitude and tells them that this miracle exists because of Charion's courage and persistence, then turns to her and repeats that it is all thanks to her. Cherion trembles as she thanks him softly. Afterward, Ijin jokingly apologizes to the monk and releases him, but Grostek Monstrosity narrows his eyes and says that saving the child cannot be the only reason Ijin sought him out. Ijin admits that he originally wanted help conquering the Jianghu, yet the child's life became more important, which makes the monk reflect on how much he has grown since 3 years ago. After testing his resolve, the monk agrees to help him. The next day, on a small isolated island, Cherion looks around in surprise and quietly tells Ijin that she never expected the next trial of Dragon and Phoenix tournament to be held in such a place, especially one cut off from the mainland. Nearby, raised voices draw their attention, and they turn to see 3 people arguing heatedly with a messenger. At the center of the commotion stands the successor of the Southern Peak Alliance, his face twisted with anger, as he demands to know how anyone could expect him to stay on a desolate island without his guards. The messenger tries to calm him, and explains that the leader of the Southern Peak Alliance already agreed to the fairness of the trial and its conditions. Ijin watches with a faint smirk and mutters that such childish behavior is exactly what he expects from people like that. Cherion, however, feels uneasy and admits that the situation makes her nervous, since being trapped on an island feels dangerous. Ijin reassures her by calmly explaining that members of the Northern Heaven Supreme family are already stationed nearby, just as the instructor mentioned earlier. When Cherion asks how he knows that, he warns her that sensing them does not mean they can relax, because carelessness here could still be fatal. As their conversation ends, a ship slowly approaches the island from the sea. On board, a young girl curls into herself in fear, her eyes trembling as she clutches her clothes. Suddenly, the sound of a plate shattering rings through the cabin, followed by her terrified scream, and moments later someone rushes out in panic, fleeing down the corridor. Inside another cabin, a grotesque man lies lazily on a bed, clicking his tongue in annoyance as he complains about the lack of attractive people on the ship, and the man licks his lips as he leans back, idly wondering how noble women differ from common ones. This man is Chung Yuma, the supreme lust fiend of the evil path, and his arrival marks the beginning of true danger. Soon, a beige flag, marked with a dragon and phoenix, flutters under the clear blue sky. The air is filled with tension as Chung, the assessor of the stage, steps into view. His presence commands respect, and participants whisper among themselves, some marveling at the reputation of a master overseeing the trial, others unsure if they are ready. Charion glances at Ijin and asks quietly if this trial is a flag capture challenge. Just then, Chung gestures toward the 2 gates at the edge of the island. He explains that the left gate leads around the island and eventually reaches the right gate, meaning the entire island itself is the trial. Participants can choose any path, and only the first 4 pairs to return with the flags will succeed, making it clear that only 8 people in total can claim victory. The crowd murmurs in shock, understanding the gravity of the challenge. A girl steps forward, introducing herself as Yang Hui of the Blood Royal sect, mentioning her senior brother, who bows politely. Yang Hui teases Charion lightly, hinting that her senior brother is infatuated with her. Flustered, he denies the claim, and the examiner interrupts sharply, ordering them to stop fooling around. Ijin smirks quietly, amused by their awkward exchange. The head instructor explains that skill alone will not guarantee success. The island is filled with mechanical traps. Though the arrow tips are wooden and harmless, participants are instructed to call for help if caught. With a nod, the trial begins. Ijin and Charion step onto a path that no one else has chosen, venturing into the unknown. Charion looks around at the dense forest and unfamiliar terrain, commenting on the unusual route. Ijin smiles knowingly, telling her that choosing a path no one else has taken often carries hidden meaning. Suddenly, Ijin's tone turns serious. He notes that instructors should be everywhere, yet he cannot sense anyone nearby. Charion pales, disbelief written across her face. They stop walking, scanning the area cautiously. Suddenly, a rustling breaks the silence. Charion reacts instantly, drawing her sword. An object flies toward her, and she blocks it, stumbling back from the impact. Her eyes widen in relief as she spots an arrow on the ground. Realizing it was part of a trap, she turns to Ijin, who stands calm, holding another arrow aimed at her back in his hand. Shocked, she notices he caught it effortlessly. Ijin flips the arrow, revealing its sharp metallic tip. Someone has tampered with the traps. Before they can react further, a scream echoes through the forest. Ijin's expression hardens. Without hesitation, he rushes toward the sound, Charion close behind, her sword ready. Meanwhile, at the island's port, a ship carrying the notorious Chung Yuma, the supreme lust fiend of the evil path, approaches. 2 instructors stationed nearby notice it and exchange concerned glances. Before they can react, a severed head rolls onto the dock, stopping them in horror. From the shadows, a sinister voice echoes, taunting them. Bloodied and imposing, Chung Yuma emerges, his aura radiating terror. One instructor tries to call for help, the other flees, but a chain weapon flies from nowhere, decapitating him instantly. The first instructor is struck next, the chain ripping through his neck with brutal precision. The dock runs red with blood as Chung Yuma strolls forward, casually remarking about women waiting, his grin twisted and cruel. Back in the forest, Ijin and Charion arrive at the source of the scream, where Yang Hui kneels over her senior brother's mutilated body, sobbing uncontrollably. The successor of the Southern Peak Alliance stands frozen, unable to move. Charion approaches Yang Hui, trying to comfort her, though her own voice trembles. Ijin's sharp eyes catch something unusual, a long blade embedded in a tree, its edge fresh with blood. He studies it carefully, scanning the scene. A participant nearby shouts in panic, admitting he never signed up for such a trial. His partner cries for help, begging to leave the island. Another yells for an instructor, but none respond. The horrifying realization hits them. The instructors are dead or incapacitated, and the island itself has become a massive, deadly trap. Ijin's expression remains unreadable, deep in thought, while Charion watches him anxiously. She asks softly if something is wrong, and whether they should retreat. Ijin's voice hardens as he declares that retreat is not an option. He reasons that the strongest traps are likely set near the return paths, anticipating any attempt to flee. Straying from their current path would lead them directly into danger. The group understands the gravity of their situation. They are trapped, surrounded, and must proceed carefully. Charion, her voice shaking, asks what they should do. Without hesitation, Ijin affirms that the only choice is to move forward, no matter the risks. Every person keenly aware that a formation array may be spread across the entire area, turning even the ground beneath their feet into a silent threat that could activate at any moment. And this constant tension makes the air feel thick and difficult to breathe. Charion, unable to suppress her growing anxiety, turns to Ijin and asks whether there is any way to destroy or dismantle such formation arrays once someone becomes trapped inside them. Ijin's expression remains cold and firm, almost like stone, as he answers that any mechanical device or formation is ultimately created by human hands, and therefore anything humans make can also be undone. His answer only confuses her further, so he explains in more detail, saying that even the creators of such formations know that they themselves could one day fall into their own traps, which is why they always leave behind a hidden solution or failsafe, because humans never create trials that have no answer. Cherion listens carefully and then asks if this means the formation near them can truly be dismantled, but Ijin admits in a calm yet heavy tone that, although it is possible, breaking such an array is extremely difficult, even for someone with his abilities, and his honesty causes unease to spread through the group. Some of the people accompanying the young master of the Southern Peak Alliance secretly doubt Ijin's words and wonder if he is exaggerating his skill, yet even they cannot deny that his presence and composure far surpass their own. The young master himself trembles visibly, muttering that they should inform his grandfather, his fear plain on his face as the sky above darkens and flocks of birds flee the area, as if sensing the danger below. With no other option, the group continues forward, each step filled with hesitation and fear. Ijin and Cherion walk side by side, their eyes constantly moving as they observe their surroundings, noticing that the paths marked with dragon and phoenix symbols all strangely led toward the same direction. Cherion asks if this convergence means they are close to the exit, and Ijin replies that it is possible, though the complete absence of traps so far makes him uneasy, as it feels like the calm before a storm. As they move deeper, Ijin suddenly senses something wrong beneath his feet, the ground feeling hollow and unnatural, and before he can warn anyone, a faint rattling sound echoes from below, like chains being dragged through darkness. Without any warning, the ground collapses beneath them, and the entire group plunges downward in chaos. Cherion squeezes her eyes shut in terror, convinced they are falling to their deaths, while Ijin holds her tightly, his grip steady despite the violent descent. Instead of endless darkness, they crash into thick, clinging mud, and as the dust settles, they realize they have fallen into a massive swamp-like pit where the air feels heavy and unnatural. Cherion instinctively tries to move, but Ijin sharply tells her to stop, explaining that this is not ordinary mud, but a special sand that cuts off internal energy, meaning the more one struggles, the deeper they sink. When he tests his own power, he confirms that even his inner energy is sealed, proving the danger of their situation. As fear spreads, the group notices a towering mechanism rising above them, a massive pillar crowned with a colossal inverted blade that gleams with murderous intent and makes everyone feel painfully small. A trembling man points at the blade, his voice shaking as the mechanism suddenly screeches and slams downward, narrowly missing several people while sending violent tremors through the pit and filling the air with screams. The blade rises again, giving a brief moment of relief, but that relief vanishes when the structure begins rotating horizontally, becoming even more unpredictable and deadly. Panic erupts as a desperate man grabs onto Ingyul, begging him to save him, while Ingyul freezes in fear and his sister screams at him to let go, her voice breaking as the mud drags them all deeper. When the blade descends again with terrifying speed, blood sprays across the swamp as the man is killed, and in the aftermath, it becomes horrifyingly clear that Ingyul, in a desperate attempt to survive, severed the man's arms to escape. Ingyul stands shaking, his sword dripping with blood, muttering to himself as he tries to justify his actions, while a young master from the Northern Heaven Supreme family coldly observes and states that Ingyul made the correct choice. Clinging to those words, Ingyul repeats them like a mantra, though his trembling hands betray his inner turmoil. Nearby, Cherion whispers to Ijin that Ingyul has gone too far and admits that she could never make such a decision, wondering if that makes her weak. Ijin tells her that her compassion is not weakness but a rare strength, though he warns her that in this world, doubt can also be dangerous. Suddenly, another shout rings out as the mechanism shifts again, and Cherion feels an odd sense of calm, believing that as long as Ijin is nearby, she will be safe. She turns to speak to him, only to realize he is gone. Panic grips her as she calls his name with no answer, and when she looks up, she sees the blade aligning directly above her. The mechanism screams as the blade plunges down, but at the final moment, the mud releases her and the ground swallows her whole, pulling her rapidly into darkness. She sinks deeper and deeper until the suffocating darkness suddenly gives way to glowing blue light, and she finds herself falling into a vast underground river where cool water surrounds her body, and her sealed energy slowly begins to return, leaving her floating in stunned silence as the nightmare above fades away. The underground river stretches endlessly beneath the earth, its surface glowing with a soft, unreal light that reflects gently against the cavern walls, creating a calm and almost sacred atmosphere that feels completely disconnected from the terror above. The water moves slowly around Cherion's body, carrying her weight as she struggles to understand where she has fallen, and before she can fully gather her thoughts, she senses a presence close to her. Turning her head cautiously, she freezes when her eyes meet a familiar figure standing beside her in the flowing current. It is Ijin. He holds her wrist firmly, yet his grip is careful and reassuring, and his calm expression, combined with the way his hair floats freely in the glowing water, gives him an almost unreal and heavenly appearance. For a brief moment, relief floods her chest, but it quickly turns into panic as she remembers the danger above. Her voice rises sharply as she tells him to let her go, fearing he is placing himself in danger for her sake. But before she can finish speaking, a powerful force surges through the river. Cherion is suddenly pushed upward by a violent current of energy, while Ijin is forced downward, his body slowly sinking deeper into the glowing water until his form disappears into the darkness below. At the same moment, a blinding burst of light erupts from the swamp above, shocking everyone still trapped there. Moments later, the source of that light becomes clear as Cherion is launched high into the sky, her body surrounded by swirling energy as she steadies herself in midair. From above, she looks down at the massive execution device looming over the swamp, its blade stained with blood and surrounded by suffering bodies. As fear threatens to paralyze her, a familiar voice reaches her mind, calm yet commanding, urging her to destroy the mechanism without hesitation. She immediately recognizes it as Ijin's voice and realizes he has guided her here on purpose. Without allowing herself time to doubt, Cherion dives downward, drawing her sword mid-fall as wind screams past her ears. She lands roughly on the swamp's surface, barely maintaining her balance as the stench of blood fills her lungs and the screams of the injured tear at her heart. Nearby, Donghua cries uncontrollably as others desperately try to stop the bleeding from her severed leg, and Cherion forces herself to look away, knowing that if she hesitates now, more lives will be lost. Her eyes scan the area and take in the horrifying scene, where bodies lie scattered across the swamp, some motionless and others writhing in pain, and for a moment, doubt creeps into her chest as she wonders whether she truly has the strength to change anything. But she quickly realizes that no one else can act, because everyone else is either wounded, terrified, or powerless, and that realization steals her resolve. Climbing onto the massive mechanism, she hesitates as memories of Ijin's words surface in her mind, recalling how he once explained that the difference between an ordinary martial artist and a true master lies in absolute focus and unwavering belief. Closing her eyes, Cherion blocks out the screams, the blood, and the fear, and instead remembers every day she spent training, every fall she endured, and every moment she refused to give up since the first time she held a sword. Her breathing steadies as her body begins to glow faintly, internal energy surging through her veins with newfound clarity. Even the wind god's gloves gifted to her by Ijin begin to radiate heat as her power gathers into a single point. With one sharp breath, she releases everything into one decisive strike, her sword crashing into the heart of the mechanism with overwhelming force. The device shudders violently, releasing a tortured groan as cracks spread across its surface, and to everyone's disbelief, the massive structure splits apart cleanly under her blade, collapsing uselessly into the swamp below. Silence follows for a brief moment, before cries of relief and disbelief erupt from the survivors, many falling to their knees as they realize the nightmare has finally ended. One of the survivors approaches Cherion with trembling hands, thanking her repeatedly for saving their lives, but she gently waves them off, her eyes drifting toward Ijin, whose quiet smile reveals that he was guiding everything from the shadows. As they move through the swamp together, Cherion asks why he chose not to reveal his role, and he simply answers that it is not yet time for him to stand in the spotlight, leaving her unsettled by the depth of his plans. As they continue forward, Cherion reflects on the massacre, realizing that such a precise and brutal trap could not have been an accident. When she voices her suspicions, Ijin answers seriously that nothing in DONGHUA happens by coincidence, and although he does not yet know who stands behind it all, he is certain this was the work of an organized force powerful enough to challenge even the Dragon and Phoenix tournament and the Northern Heaven Supreme family. Elsewhere, a beautiful woman lounges calmly in a quiet chamber filled with drifting butterflies, casually informing an old man that her people have already begun their operation, while dismissing his concerns about employing Chung Yu-Make Scourge. Back on the island, hope rises when the group finally reaches what appears to be an exit, and exhausted survivors rush toward it with desperate relief. believing they are finally safe. Cherion turns to Ijin to ask if it is truly over, but he does not answer. Moments later, their hope shatters when they see the head examiner hanging lifeless from a tree, with the bodies of other examiners piled beneath him, and a group of assailants standing nearby, reveling in their victory. As fear grips everyone present, Igion's eyes harden, and he understands with certainty that this is only the beginning. The atmosphere grows heavy and suffocating as a man dressed in deep red robes slowly turns toward the frightened survivors, his lips curling into a twisted smile as he introduces himself in a calm but unsettling voice, declaring that most people know him as Chung Yumaik Scourge Chung Yuma. The moment his name leaves his mouth, shock spreads through the crowd because his reputation is infamous even within the brutal world of Jianghu. Even Ijin and Charian focus all their attention on the man, fully aware that they are now standing before a true monster. Chung Yuma laughs dismissively at their reaction, waving off his own title as though it means nothing, claiming that names are empty things, yet the fear in the air only thickens. Uneasy, Cherion leans closer to Ijin and quietly asks if this man's fame is truly connected to his cruelty toward women. Ijin confirms her fear in a low voice, explaining that Chung Yuma is notorious for violating countless women, using them as human cauldrons to steal their vital energy and strengthen himself, leaving his victims trapped in a state that is neither fully alive nor properly dead. With his usual calm, Ijin adds dryly that he is glad he is not a woman, only to be sharply scolded by Cherion, who reminds him that this is not a moment for jokes. As the tension builds, Ijin senses something disturbing and notices an old, hunched woman staring at him with a hungry and unnatural gaze, murmuring under her breath as if she is already imagining him as prey. Meanwhile, Chung Yuma addresses the group again, announcing that his employer has ordered them to show everyone what real hell looks like. Confused, Charion asks Ijin whether this is the same organization he mentioned before, and Ijin quietly responds that this group seems driven not by ambition, but by deep and long-held resentment. Chung Yuma continues mocking the crowd, openly stating that, although there are many women present, he can only absorb so much energy in one day, forcing him to carefully choose his targets. Nearby, Ingeol whispers urgently to Lim about attacking together while they still have a chance, but Lim shuts him down immediately, stating bluntly that they would all be killed the instant they tried. Suddenly, the young Master Yang draws his sword and charges forward in a burst of reckless courage, but Chung Yuma barely reacts, calmly reaching out and grabbing Yang's arm before twisting it violently with a sickening crack that echoes through the clearing. Yang screams in agony as his arm bends at an impossible angle and gasps erupt from the horrified onlookers. With terrifying ease, Chung Yuma lifts him by the neck, mocking him for being loud but weak, and when Yang curses him defiantly, even through the pain, the demon responds by slapping him repeatedly, each strike drawing blood and crushing his dignity further. The survivors can only stand frozen as the beating continues, unable to intervene. Horrified, Cherion whispers that if everyone attacks together, they might survive, but Ijin stops her immediately, warning that such an attempt would be pointless and only lead to meaningless deaths. He adds coldly that although this suffering is cruel, it may become a lesson that strengthens Yang if he survives. When Yang finally loses consciousness and collapses, Chung Yuma scoffs, remarking that he should have submitted earlier, before tossing his broken body aside like trash. As the demon turns away, Seol steps forward without hesitation to help Yang, drawing the demon's attention. His expression shifts into something predatory as he asks her name, and when she answers calmly, his grin widens as he praises her beauty, declaring that a woman from Greenwater Mountain Manor must possess especially pure and refined inner energy. Unsatisfied with just one victim, Chung Yuma turns his gaze back to the group, then locks eyes with Charion, openly expressing his desire for her, causing her to recoil in shock and disgust. He orders his subordinates to seize the women he has chosen and keep watch over the others, but one subordinate hesitates, reminding him that their mission was to capture everyone quietly and leave the island. Chung Yuma explodes in rage, grabbing the subordinate by the collar and snarling that he has waited far too long for this moment, threatening to kill anyone who dares to disobey him. The survivors realize with growing dread that this man is completely unrestrained and that the true nightmare is only beginning. Suddenly, a calm voice cuts through the chaos, silencing everyone. It is Ijiyun. One of the lackeys, enraged by his composure, charges forward while shouting about his arrogance, but Ijiyun remains unmoved and calmly declares that Cherion is his phoenix partner, stating with quiet certainty that they will live and die together. The almost romantic weight of his words causes even Chung Yuma to pause, his laughter twisting into something unstable. Ijin continues, saying that if they intend to take Cherion, then they must take him as well. Chung Yuma stares at him in disbelief, calling him a lunatic before breaking into laughter, then ordering his men to bring both Ijin and Charion along, claiming he has many interesting plans for them. Eventually, the captives are led into a dark cavern, where the demon proudly remarks that he has never seen women as beautiful as Charion and Seol, mocking them as rare snacks. He glances at Ijin and Charion, commenting that they seem like lovers, and Ijin answers only with a faint smile. The demon begins recounting a past cruelty, describing how he once forced a man to watch while he tormented the man's partner, then leans close to Charion and whispers that today will be just as entertaining. Before he can act, however, the light inside the cave suddenly goes out, plunging everything into darkness. In the next instant, another captive collapses as his blood vessels seal shut. Startled, Chung Yuma draws his weapon and scans the darkness, briefly suspecting Charion before dismissing the thought. A faint movement catches his eye, and his gaze settles on Ijin, who stands calmly in the dark with a faint, unreadable smile. Enraged, Chung Yuma lunges toward him with killing intent, yet Ijin does not flinch. Instead of stepping back, Ijin leaps smoothly into the air and avoids the attack with calm ease, and the sight shocks Chung Yuma because he does not expect such speed, balance, and control from someone so young and composed. Ijin lands lightly on a thick chain hanging across the cave, using it like solid ground, and without wasting even a breath, he pushes forward and closes the distance in a single fluid motion, striking back with frightening precision. Chung Yuma manages to block the blow at the last moment, but the impact shakes his entire body, forcing a hollow laugh from his throat as he admits that Ijin is stronger than expected while still mocking him as nothing more than an arrogant upstart. Ijin responds with quiet humor, his tone relaxed as he ridicules the demon's overconfidence, and this only fuels the demon's rage. Enraged, Chung Yuma launches a relentless barrage of attacks, swinging his weapon wildly as shockwaves tear through the cave, shattering stone pillars and collapsing sections of the ceiling. As the cave begins to crumble, Charion does not hesitate and quickly carries the unconscious young master Yang along with Seol away from the battlefield, forcing herself to remain calm while rocks fall and dust fills the air. Amid the chaos, Chung Yuma suddenly loses sight of Ijin and turns sharply, scanning the battlefield in irritation, only for Ijin to appear behind him without warning and strike with deadly intent. Sensing danger at the last second, the demon narrowly avoids a fatal wound and counters by snapping his chains around Ijin's arm, his face twisted in fury as blood drips from the cut Ijin leaves across his cheek. With a roar, the demon hurls Ijin into the air, but Ijin lands effortlessly, balanced and unshaken, as though gravity itself obeys him. In response, Ijin delivers a powerful kick that slams into the demon's body and sends him staggering backward, blood spilling from his mouth as panic begins to rise within him. Desperate to regain control, Chung Yuma unleashes a powerful attack filled with his accumulated energy, but Ijin meets it head-on and shatters it with his bare hand, stunning everyone who witnesses the exchange. The demon continues attacking without pause, yet every strike is calmly deflected, redirected, or neutralized by Ijin's precise movements. And from a distance, Charion watches in disbelief as she realizes that Ijin's true strength is far beyond anything she imagined. Chung Yuma's confidence crumbles as fear seeps into his thoughts, and he begins to wonder how someone so young can possess such overwhelming power. When he senses that Ijin is using a palm technique, the demon regains some confidence and decides to meet him directly, believing his decades of stolen energy will overpower Ijin. Their palms collide in a deafening explosion that shakes the cave violently, sending cracks racing across the stone walls. At first, Chung Yuma is certain he is winning, but as seconds pass, his expression twists in horror when he realizes that his energy is draining rapidly, while Ijin remains unmoved and unstrained. Veins bulge across the demon's face as he forces more power into the clash, causing the cave to collapse further, and moonlight begins to pour in through the broken ceiling. Under the open sky, the demon trembles as the crushing weight of Ijin's power overwhelms him completely. Ijin speaks calmly, condemning the demon for sacrificing countless lives for meaningless strength, and with a sudden surge, he sends the demon crashing into a wall, shattering stone and leaving him coughing blood. Realizing defeat is inevitable, the demon targets Charion and launches his weapon toward her in desperation, but Ijin releases his demonic sword, severing the chains midair with terrifying force. He tells Charion to close her eyes, strikes the ground, and in a single motion, slices off both of the demon's arms. The demon collapses in terror, crawling away, but Ijin ends him mercilessly, his eyes burning red as the sword's spirit consumes him, and with a final strike, Chung Yuma is completely destroyed. While he is taking his last breaths, he wonders just who Ijin is. Moments later, a group of men arrives at the cave after hearing the thunderous sounds echoing through the mountains, and as they step inside, their faces freeze when they see the blood-soaked ground and the lifeless body of their once mighty leader lying broken among the ruins. None of them can understand how someone so powerful could die in such a brutal way, and their shocked eyes slowly turn toward Ijin, who stands calmly at the center of the carnage with his sword still dripping blood. His expression is cold and steady, making the scene feel unreal, and because they cannot accept that a young man like him could kill their leader alone, one of them steps forward, filled with rage and disbelief, and accuses Ijin of lying. His denial quickly turns into blind anger, and he swings his sword at Ijin without hesitation, but before anyone can even react, the man is cut in half in a single clean motion. His body collapses, blood spraying across the stone floor, and the remaining men stagger back in horror as fear crushes their confidence. Ijin does not give them time to recover, and gripping his demonic sword firmly, he moves like a shadow through the cave, his strikes fast, and soon the cave becomes a silent grave filled with broken bodies and pools of blood. Cheryeon stands frozen nearby, her heart pounding as she watches the massacre unfold, unable to process what she is seeing. Ijin, soaked in blood from head to toe, looks nothing like the man she laughed with and trusted, and the clash between her warm memories and this terrifying image leaves her shaken. When Ijin turns to look at her, the silence becomes unbearable, and the sight of his eyes, one glowing red and the other yellow, sends a chill through her body. He reminds her that he told her to close her eyes earlier, and then, slowly, his expression softens as the red fades away. The terrifying presence disappears, replaced by the familiar smile she knows, making the contrast even more disturbing. As he sheathes his sword, its ominous energy still lingering, Ijin admits that he cannot fully control himself when using it, explaining with frustration that its power exceeds his current limits and endangers both himself and others. He then reveals that the sword once belonged to his mother, which surprises Cheryeon and deepens the mystery surrounding his past. Seeing her discomfort, Ijin casually mentions his father's weapon, a sword he carries but refuses to draw, stating that he intends to conquer the world using only his mother's blade. When Cheryeon asks why he keeps the other sword if he will never use it, Ijin changes the subject and asks if she is all right, and although she answers yes, her eyes remain fixed on the bodies around them. She tells herself that no matter what she sees, Ijin is still Ijin. Later, survivors arrive and bow repeatedly, thanking young Master Yang for saving them, and when Yang wakes up holding a sword, he assumes he killed everyone himself. Ijin and Cheryeon support this misunderstanding, and Yang proudly believes his grandfather granted him hidden strength. While the crowd praises him, Ijin and Cheryeon exchange quiet glances. Meanwhile, the Dragon and Phoenix tournament comes to an abrupt yet mesmerizing end, leaving the entire DONGHUA shaken by rumors and half-truths that begin spreading faster than the wind. At the Northern Peak Alliance, Huimak approaches In Myung, inform him about the extermination of the Chung Yuma, and to ensure that the people trapped in the incident are rescued properly. While speaking, Huimak casually adds that In Myung's grandson has performed exceptionally well. In Myung lowers his head slightly because he understands the truth far better than anyone else present, and after a brief pause, he quietly corrects Huimak by stating that his grandson is not responsible for killing the Lyris demonic scourge. With a tired sigh, In Myung explains that while his grandson is indeed talented and possesses dangerous poison techniques, his abilities are nowhere near enough to defeat a monster as powerful and experienced as the Lyris demonic scourge. As he speaks, there is neither pride nor disappointment in his voice, only a clear understanding of his grandson's limits and the harsh reality of strength in Jianghu. When Huimak asks who could possibly have achieved such an impossible feat, In Myung mentions Ijin, recalling that the boy participated in the tournament. Huimak's eyes narrow with interest as he asks for confirmation, and In Myung, lost in thought, gives a small nod while memories of Ijin's calm eyes and unfathomable presence surface in his mind. Huimak suggests that they should secretly investigate Igyeon to uncover the truth, but In Myung immediately dismisses the idea, warning that provoking such a person without certainty would be foolish. Instead, he suggests pretending to know nothing while quietly observing from afar, allowing events to unfold naturally. Huimak agrees, though he comments that this situation could be used to damage the reputation of the Northern Heaven Supreme family, but In Myung calmly warns him that acting recklessly could invite disasters far greater than they can control. Hearing this, Huimak finally understands the danger and grows silent, while In Myung decides to play along with the unseen forces manipulating events from the shadows. Elsewhere, surrounded by towering peaks, flowing clouds, and endless forests, Ijin walks beside Cheryeon as they speak about a place called New Wind Manor. And when they finally arrive, Ijin reveals that it is his home, leaving Sharian visibly stunned. As she stares at the grand gates and vast grounds, she silently marvels at how he continues to surprise her at every turn. When Ijin opens the door, brilliant light floods out, revealing a larger space hidden within the manor. Cherion is left speechless as she stares at the massive construction site. Ijin explains that the true Azure Heaven sect is being built deep inside the heart of New Wind Manor. The scale of the project reflects both his ambition and unwavering determination. Cherion struggles to believe that such an enormous space exists behind what appears to be an ordinary manor. Ijin excitedly explains that New Wind Manor serves as the entrance gate to the Azure Heaven sect. He describes how the gourd-shaped terrain is being used strategically, with the manor acting as the control center for all operations. For secrecy, the laborers brought to the site have their eyes covered to prevent them from learning the location. He also shares plans to construct a massive training hall and dormitories capable of housing several thousand people. Charion feels overwhelmed by the scale of his vision and realizes that very few forces in DONGHUA could ever manage such an undertaking. With firm resolve, Ijin reveals the true purpose behind his ambition. He believes DONGHUA has long been ruled by the 4 overlord families, and he intends to overthrow them all. His presence radiates calm confidence, making his declaration feel disturbingly real. Charion is shocked by his boldness, yet she cannot deny the power in his aura. Meanwhile, at the North Sky Overlord family's Wuhan branch, chaos unfolds. Yunsang-ga, master of the Blood King clan, slams his hand against the table in fury. His rage stems from the death of his greatest disciple and the brutal injury of his youngest daughter, whose feet have been severed. He directs his anger toward the master of the North Sky Overlord family, accusing him of failing to protect the children. The tension in the room grows heavy as others consider stepping in. Lim Cheonce maintains composure and explains that he understands the pain of losing loved ones. He assures everyone that a thorough investigation is already underway, as he had anticipated such an incident. Earlier, his military advisor warns him that many families have lost children and will not remain silent. Lim Cheonce privately suspects a traitor, as the attack occurred at a secret third gate. His advisors propose a ruthless strategy, transforming those with minor contributions into so-called perfect heroes, spreading the idea that the fallen children died due to weakness. This would shame the grieving families into silence. Lim Cheonce finds the plan effective, but acknowledges that non-compliance will bring severe consequences. Back in the meeting, Lim Cheonce accepts responsibility while emphasizing that the issue affects all of DONGHUA. He points out that many talented youths survived and even protected others during the chaos. Yunsang-ga grows even more enraged, repeatedly bringing up his grandson. Lim Cheonce finally snaps, questioning whether killing his own grandson would satisfy him. Yunsang-ga is left speechless, his anger turning into helpless grief. The room falls silent as everyone understands the brutal reality of DONGHUA's power struggles. The law of the jungle reigns supreme, and mercy is a luxury few can afford. Elsewhere, Ijin informs Cherion about the Windy Mountain Gang, a bandit faction that pretends to offer protection in exchange for money. He calmly expresses his intention to wipe them out. Cherion feels uneasy, worrying that his actions may spiral into unnecessary destruction. She considers that some bandits may have turned to crime simply to survive. Ijin firmly rejects the idea, believing that truly good people remain good regardless of hardship. As they approach the bandits' territory, 2 guards spot them. The guards are distracted by Cherion's beauty, but quickly turn hostile. One bandit charges forward, attempting a lethal strike against Ijin. Without effort, Ijin catches the blade with his bare hand and counters with overwhelming force, leaving the attacker unconscious and vomiting blood. Cherion realizes that his idea of mercy does not involve killing. The remaining guard freezes in terror as Ijin's gaze locks onto him, accompanied by a chilling smile. Ijin advances effortlessly, proving his complete control over the situation. Soon, the sounds of battle echo throughout the camp. Cherion faces multiple enemies at once, moving with newfound confidence. When an enemy attempts to strike her, she reacts instantly, incapacitating him with a precise blow to the neck. She feels exhilarated, recognizing her rapid improvement in combat. Ijin dominates the battlefield with brutal efficiency, slamming enemies into the ground with mocking ease. He encourages Cherion to push herself further, reminding her that real growth comes through life and death experiences. Suddenly, a hidden projectile flies toward her. She slices it in half midair, but a strange powder disperses, and she inhales it. She immediately senses something wrong as the substance spreads through her body. At that moment, the bandit leader steps forward from the shadows. He calmly observes the scene, acknowledging that only highly skilled martial artists could defeat so many of his men so effortlessly. The bandit leader explains that the powder Cherion inhales is a dangerous mixture of poison and an aphrodisiac, The substance forces her instincts to seek a partner. He clarifies that without mating, the poison will eventually kill her. Ijin immediately reacts in a casual way, reassuring that he is available to help. Charion moves forward and violently subdues the bandit in order to obtain an antidote. Charion successfully restrains the bandit, only to learn that out of 3 bottles, only one contains the real antidote. Ijin suggests pouring the poison onto him instead, reasoning that his cultivation is weaker than hers, meaning he would suffer faster, and force the bandit to reveal the truth. Charion freezes, horrified by the idea of sacrificing someone else for her own survival. Ijin reflects that his mother would have approved of her decision, adding that her nature reminds him of his father. Without prolonging the moment, he steps forward and violently kicks the bandit leader, taking control of the situation himself. He instructs Charion to focus inward and regulate her energy, guiding her to sense anything unfamiliar within her body. After a short time, Charion is stunned to realize the poison's effects have completely vanished. Ijin silently reflects on her refusal to poison another person and feels she made the right choice. Charion doubts whether he was ever serious, but he reassures her through his actions that he genuinely respects her compassion. He then emphasizes that she must grow stronger, because only strength can protect a kind heart in a cruel world. He believes kindness and righteousness have become fragile ideals, and only overwhelming power can preserve them. As night falls, at the center of Palm Clan, Ingeol meets with his father, Daesanjang, the leader of the clan. Daesanjang comments on rumors of a girl from the Righteous Sword clan who performed exceptionally well in the recent tournament. He questions whether this girl is the one Ingeol is meant to form an alliance with. Daesanjang scolds his son harshly, criticizing him for allowing himself to be disrespected by what he sees as an unimportant family. He reveals that the Blood King clan leader has reportedly traveled to the underworld. Ingeol finds the claim hard to believe and doubts that the man would take his own life. Manhwa coldly dismisses his doubts and asserts that the North Sky Overlord family must be involved. Daesanjang agrees, stating that such cruelty is entirely within their capabilities. He laughs darkly and reassures his children that aligning themselves with the North Sky Overlord family was the correct decision. He emphasizes that antagonizing such a force would be suicidal. However, Ijin and Mu Yang listen from the rooftop. Mu Yang remarks that their confidence will vanish once events unfold at the Ancient Sword Store, a major asset of the center of Palm Clan. Ijin confirms that Mu Yang has brought the item, and Mu Yang hands him a locked box. As Ijin puts on a human mask, Mu Yang is amazed by how lifelike the disguise appears. Ijin believes that if everything proceeds smoothly, they will secure enough funds for a long time, while also driving a wedge between the center of Palm Clan and the North Sky Overlord family. Mu Yang warns him to remain cautious. Ijin acknowledges the risk, admitting that no impersonation is flawless. He lifts the box and remarks that its contents are powerful enough to cloud the judgment of any greedy elder. They share a brief laugh before Mu Yang reminds him that the real Inner Affairs Master is asleep and will not appear that night. Later, Ijin, fully disguised, visits the Ancient Sword Store. The manager is visibly nervous as he questions the purpose of such an important visitor. Ijin places the box on the table and urges the manager to listen carefully, warning that the matter carries deadly consequences if revealed. The manager immediately assumes the situation involves immense danger and profit. When the box is opened, a radiant light fills the room. The manager instantly recognizes the artifact as the Cheonma sect's treasured divine demon Jade Buddha. His mind races as he estimates its value at no less than 500,000 silver. Greed overwhelms him as he considers potential profits but realizes the risk of handling it alone. Eventually, the manager offers 200,000 silver. Ijin pretends to hesitate before reluctantly accepting, with the condition that payment be made in untraceable slips. The manager struggles to hide his excitement as the deal concludes. Ijin later returns to Mu Yang and removes his mask, explaining that the task was simple. He reveals the real plan is to break into the Ancient Sword Store that night and reclaim the jade Buddha along with several thousand silver. Mu Yang warns him about the 12 unbreakable formations guarding the Ancient Sword Store safe. Ijin dismisses the concern, claiming no formation exists that he cannot dismantle. He anticipates devastating losses for the center of Palm Clan and severe backlash, especially with the North Sky Overlord family being implicated. Even so, he feels the plan to slowly drain the Union dry is still incomplete. The next morning, chaos erupts inside the center of Palm Clan. Daesanjang is furious as the Ancient Sword Store manager reports that the vault has been completely destroyed and that all weapons and stored money have vanished. With visible anxiety, he informs Daesanjang that an Inner Affairs Master from the North Sky Overlord family visited the store the previous day. The manager explains that the master entrusted the Jade Buddha to the store for safekeeping. Daesanjang finds it extremely strange that such a priceless artifact is deposited only to be stolen the very same night. Doubt briefly turns toward the manager, but Daesun-jang quickly dismisses the idea, believing the man lacks the courage and ability to plan such a crime. His thoughts then shift to the inner affairs master, known for being cunning, yet even that explanation does not fully align with the situation. The entire incident appears to be a scheme orchestrated by the North Sky Overlord family. For years, the North Sky Overlord family has conducted business in Wuhan through the center of Palm Clan. Their relationship has been close and mutually beneficial. As Daesun-jang struggles to process this, another subordinate rushes in with urgent news. The armory has also been broken into. Daesun-jang's anger intensifies as he demands details, immediately suspecting that a large stock of weapons has been stolen. At the same time, Ijin calmly inspects the weapons. Muyong explains that the craftsmanship is exceptional because the weapons were originally prepared for delivery to the North Sky Overlord family. Ijin smiles, revealing that he deliberately left behind traces at the armory to ensure suspicion would fall entirely on the North Sky Overlord family. His goal is to trap the center of Palm Clan Master in a situation where doubt and resentment can no longer be ignored. Muyong agrees that suspicion is inevitable, but points out that openly confronting the North Sky Overlord family is impossible. Ijin predicts that by the time the ceremony arrives, Daesun-jang's doubts will have fully taken root. Muyong adds that the ceremony honors individuals with major achievements, and remarks that Charyeon, who disabled the trap, and Suchsang-yang, who claimed credit for Ijin's work, are likely to receive recognition. Ijin reflects on Charyeon's hesitation to accept the award. She believes the achievement does not belong solely to her. However, becoming recognized as the Phoenix would greatly benefit the Righteous Sword Clan. A few days later, the Dragon and Phoenix Awards ceremony begins. Charyeon receives endless congratulations from all sides. Instead of feeling proud, she grows increasingly frustrated, believing that Ijin deserves the praise more than anyone. She has not seen him since their last meeting days earlier. Ijin explained his decision to remain at the Azure Heaven sect, stating that he could no longer inconvenience her. She questioned why he suddenly cared about such things. Before leaving, he urged her not to refuse the Phoenix title and reminded her that disabling the mechanism was entirely her own achievement. Charyeon remembers asking why he even joined the Dragon and Phoenix tournament with her when he showed no interest in such events. Ijin explained that on the first day they met, Ingeal provoked him, and despite the center of Palm Clan's influence, Charyeon stood up for him. In all his years wandering Jianghu, no stranger had ever defended him before. Now, standing at the ceremony, Charyeon remains lost in thought as others praise her martial skill. Their admiration barely registers. The moment is interrupted when Ingeal approaches with clear hostility. He begins implying that her success is not due to her own abilities. Charyeon watches him calmly, sensing his accusations. He presses her, questioning how she escaped the swamp unharmed and how she managed to destroy such a massive trap. He implies that the feat exceeds her capabilities. Feeling pressured, Charyeon attributes her success to luck. Ingeal remains unconvinced and internally concludes that she must have relied on improper means. Without warning, he draws his sword and attempts to challenge her publicly, hoping to expose her. The sudden act shocks the crowd. He frames the duel as a test of her true strength, insisting that if she truly earned her title, defeating him should be effortless. Speculation spreads through the crowd as attention turns to the confrontation. Ingeal escalates the situation further by suggesting the Righteous Sword Sect may be cooperating with criminals and accuses Charyeon of associating with a mysterious individual before the tournament. At that moment, Charyeon draws her sword calmly, accepting the challenge. Before she can fully prepare, Ingeal attacks. Charyeon effortlessly evades and counters with stunning precision. Instead of killing him, she strikes his cheek with the flat of her sword, knocking his weapon from his hand. Ingeal realizes instantly that he has been completely defeated. Watching from the side, Daesun-jang feels deep shame as he sees his son defeated so publicly. His unease grows when he notices the head of the North Sky Overlord family openly praising Charyeon's father. Combined with the recent robberies, Daesun-jang's suspicions intensify. That night, beneath a quiet moonlit sky, Ijin sits calmly with Muyong. Muyong senses restlessness in him, but Ijin explains that his focus is now entirely on raising his sect. Muyong still cannot understand why Ijin avoided the ceremony. Ijin believes his presence might have burdened Charyeon. As the night deepens, Ijin gazes at the sky, calm yet uneasy, sensing that something unseen is beginning to stir. That same night, Ingeal issues a ruthless order. He commands So Chung to capture Charyeon, referring to her with open contempt. So Chung hesitates, seeking confirmation, fully aware that she is the second daughter of the Righteous Sword Sect. Ingeal makes his intention clear through his actions. Soon after, Daesun Jang appears and declares with absolute conviction that this night will mark the complete extermination of the Righteous Sword sect. He views it as a warning to anyone who dares challenge the center of Palm Clan. He orders So Chung to participate directly, stressing the importance of involving a high-level martial artist. At the Righteous Sword sect, everything remains quiet, unaware of the looming disaster. Suddenly, Cherion awakens and her instincts sharpen instantly, and unease floods her mind. Though unprepared, she reacts without hesitation. She grabs her sword and rushes toward the front yard. Realizing the danger, she sprints forward to warn her family. Without warning, a blade flashes toward her neck. She halts instantly, narrowly evading death. Her martial instincts take over. She grips her sword and delivers a precise counterattack. Blood sprays as the attacker falls lifeless to the ground, his body collapsing against the fence. For a brief moment, fear grips her as blood stains her nightgown. Her heart wavers, but she forces herself to move on, refusing to drown in guilt. She turns and rushes deeper into the sect to find her mother and sisters. At the same time, Ijin stands atop a wooden structure, overlooking the construction of his growing sect. Muyong rushes toward him with urgency. The informant assigned to watch the Righteous Sword sect reports dozens of suspicious figures launching a coordinated attack. As the details sink in, Ijin's expression darkens. A terrifying killing intent radiates from him as dread takes hold. Back at the sect, Cherion fights relentlessly. She confronts multiple attackers at once, cutting them down with sharp, efficient movements. Bodies fall with every strike. Flames begin to spread across the grounds as the sheer number of enemies overwhelms her. Her nightgown clings to her body, soaked in blood. Her breathing grows heavy, yet her eyes remain unwavering. No matter how many enemies fall, more continue to advance. Her father lies unconscious, gravely wounded from defending the family. Her mother clutches the youngest child tightly, while her eldest sister stands protectively beside her, sword trembling in her hands. They are completely surrounded. So Chung, masked and calm, observes the scene. He acknowledges Charion's strength, understanding why Injil holds her in such regard. Still, he silently questions how long the family can last. Cherion realizes the truth. With her father down, she is the final line of defense. She resolves to hold on no matter the cost. An offer of mercy is extended toward her family if she surrenders, but her resolve does not waver. Instead, memories of Ijin surface in her mind. His calm presence, his warm expressions, and his unwavering belief in strength echo within her. She briefly looks toward the gate, hoping for his arrival, but accepts that she cannot rely on anyone else. Summoning her remaining strength, she attacks again. This time, her strike is stopped. The enemy overpowers her, forcing her sword from her grip. The attacker moves toward her mother. So Chung orders his men to ignore Cherion and kill the rest. The attacker lunges at her mother, but Cherion reacts instantly. She throws herself forward and blocks the blade with her bare hand. A surge of power bursts from her body, empowered by the wind god. Blood seeps from her sealed lips as the strain overwhelms her. She collapses to her knees, coughing violently as exhaustion overtakes her. Her body trembles, consumed by a desperate wish to be just a little stronger. Memories resurface of Ijin equipping her right hand with a special glove. He once explained that it could block sword energy, but only by sacrificing her own strength. The attacker, filled with rage, raises his sword to finish her. Her mother gasps in terror, reaching toward her fallen daughter. Her eldest sister swings her sword blindly, tears streaming, her movements driven by despair rather than technique. However, suddenly, everything stops. The attacker freezes mid-motion. What stands before him is no ordinary presence. It feels like a heavenly dragon descending into the mortal world. An overwhelming pressure crashes down, crushing all resistance. The aura alone roots everyone in place. The presence radiates absolute dominance. Its gaze locks onto the attacker with terrifying intensity. The dragon-like presence seems ready to devour everything in its path. No one can move and no one can breathe. Cherion watches in stunned disbelief. So Chung and his subordinates stand frozen. Her mother and sister are unable to react. Silence consumes the battlefield as the monstrous presence asserts itself, signaling the arrival of something far beyond human limits. Ijin shows up asking Cherion if she is okay, and she confirms yes, yet a radiant glow lights Cherion's face as she looks at Ijin standing between her and the enemy. Ijin hesitates to reveal his true demonic nature, especially in front of her. Surrounded by flames and destruction, Ijin's pupils glow red as his killing intent rises. He turns toward the assassins who dared to touch the person he vowed to protect. So Chung, stunned by Ijin's sudden appearance, struggles to understand where such a terrifying martial artist comes from. He quickly orders his men to eliminate Ijin first. Two assassins charge forward. Ijin gathers energy into his fist and strikes the first attacker before the sword can fall. The impact instantly ends the man's life. Another assassin rushes in, but Ijin crushes his leg with a precise attack and finishes him without hesitation. The brutality of his movements leaves no room for resistance. So Chung freezes in shock, unable to track Ijin's movements. Fear grips him as bodies begin falling one after another. What follows is complete slaughter. The assassins collapse before they can react. Panic spreads, but escape is impossible. So Chung swings his sword blindly when he senses danger behind him, but Ijin dodges effortlessly and strikes his head, knocking him down and disarming him. Calm and dominant, Ijin seizes the sword and confirms So Chung's loyalty to Ingyal through his actions. Ijin brings the blade down towards So Chung's neck and stops just short. So Chung breaks instantly and reveals everything without resistance. He admits the Center of Palm Clan master ordered the massacre but planned to keep Charian alive. He continues, revealing that Ingyal personally ordered Charian to be captured and taken to him. Igyeon demands Daesanjang's location. Desperate to live, So Chung reveals that Ingyal waits in the woods to the south. Igyeon listens coldly and condemns So Chung for committing acts he himself lacks the courage to face. Without hesitation, he ends So Chung's life. From a distance, Charian's family watches in disbelief. They feel overwhelming gratitude, mixed with fear at the power Ijin displays. Charian struggles to reconcile the gentle man she knows with the ruthless figure standing among fallen enemies. Everything he has done is for her. Despite her injuries, Charian approaches him, her concern clear. Ijin apologizes for arriving late. His tone softens, and the violence in his eyes fades. Tears gather in her eyes as relief washes over her. Before the moment deepens, Muyong arrives and bows respectfully to Ijin, relieved that he arrived in time. He reassures Charian's family and helps calm the situation. Ijin quickly instructs Muyong to escort Charian's family to New Wind Manor and ensure their injuries receive proper treatment. With that handled, Ijin declares that the time has come to erase the Center of Palm Clan completely. Deep in the forest, Ingyal grows impatient as So Chung fails to return. Footsteps approach, but instead of So Chung, Ijin appears. His calm presence unsettles Ingyal. Ijin warns him to leave immediately, claiming that martial artists from the North Sky Overlord family are already moving. He explains that assassins attacked the Righteous Sword sect but were swiftly eliminated by arriving reinforcements, who then escorted the survivors to safety. The information shakes Ingyal. Ijin adds that he overheard the attackers revealing Ingyal's involvement. Rage flashes through Ingyal's expression. Ijin urges him to warn his father, implying the danger may spread further. Suspicion rises, and Ingyal questions Ijin's motives. Ijin remains composed and demands payment for life-saving information, asking for 1,000 silver. Ingyal hesitates. The warning sounds dangerous, yet impossible to ignore. He leaves with a threat, warning Ijin to remain silent if the information proves false. Ijin watches him depart without concern. Everything is unfolding exactly as intended. Back at the center of Palm Clan headquarters, Daesanjang shouts as Ingyal reports the alleged involvement of the North Sky Overlord family. Doubt lingers, but the dead assassins and recent events align too closely to dismiss. Daesanjang realizes the Righteous Sword sect alone could not have survived the attack. If the North Sky Overlord family intervened, everything has changed. Manhwa voices her fear, realizing that an alliance between the two factions would mean their destruction. Daesanjang knows too many secrets to feel safe. In desperation, he retrieves a hidden box filled with glowing moonlight pearls worth a fortune. He orders his children to flee to a safe house. He explains that the wealth represents their only chance of survival. Daesanjang then decides to seek protection from the Southern Mountain Alliance, offering sensitive information about the North Sky Overlord family in exchange. Betrayal becomes his final option. Unseen, Ijin listens from above. Muyong joins him and confirms that Charian's family has reached New Wind Manor safely. Ijin remarks that Daesanjang now has only one path left, and whichever choice he makes will trigger the next phase. Muyong silently admires the depth of Ijin's strategy, realizing it targets multiple factions at once. When asked about Ingyal's fate, Ijin shows no hesitation. Regardless of his decision, Ingyal will die before the night ends. Sometime later, the siblings arrive at a safe house that Daesanjang secretly prepared for emergencies. Manhwa looks around and reflects on their uncertain future and worries about what will happen if everything collapses. As she moves deeper into the house, she notices her brother's silence and turns to question him. Before she can continue, several precise strikes hit her acupoints, instantly paralyzing her body and cutting off her voice. Ingyal steps closer with a cold presence and declares that she should inform their father that he intends to keep the stolen moonlight pearls for himself. Horror spreads across Manhwa's face as she realizes the truth. The scene changes to Ingeol, rushing through a dense forest, his thoughts racing. He considers the possibility of spending the rest of his life on the run from the North Sky Overlord family. Still, he convinces himself that the immense wealth promised by the Moonlight Pearls justifies his actions. He concludes that it is better for one person to survive than for the entire family to fall. Suddenly, his fear spikes as a man appears directly in his path. Ingeol immediately realizes that the man, Ijin, followed him without being detected. Panic sets in as he stops and draws his sword, launching an attack fueled by hatred and desperation. Before the strike can land, Ijin's fist crashes into Ingeol's face, sending him flying into a tree. Blood pours from Ingeol's broken nose as he collapses to the ground, coughing violently. The chest containing the Moonlight Pearls lands nearby. As he struggles to recover, dread fills his mind when he understands that Ijin has been hiding his true strength all along. Desperate, he reaches for the chest, only for Ijin to stomp down on his hand, crushing it into the ground. Ijin remains calm and menacing, making it clear that Ingeol never stood a chance. Fear overwhelms Ingeol as his survival instinct screams at him to flee. Using the last of his strength, he escapes and runs back toward the safe house. His thoughts spiral as he reassures himself that his father will forgive him, just as he always has in the past. Without warning, Ijin reappears and unleashes a powerful kick infused with inner energy. The strike narrowly misses Ingeol, but completely shatters a massive tree. The intentional miss serves as a terrifying display of Ijin's overwhelming power. Watching this, Ingeol's expression darkens with disbelief as he realizes how badly he misjudged his opponent. Ijin lands smoothly and immediately closes the distance again. Ingeol's panic intensifies as he realizes that capture means certain death. Suddenly, a stick charged with inner energy slices through the air, grazing his cheek before embedding itself into a tree. The energy detonates, reducing the tree to fragments. More projectiles follow, tearing through the forest and obliterating everything in their path. Ingeol's desperation turns into rage as he questions Ijin's motives and assumes this pursuit has something to do with the righteous sword sect and Cheryon. Even while fleeing for his life, his arrogance pushes him to insult her. Ijin remains completely unfazed and responds with cold indifference. Sensing a chance to survive, Ingeol attempts to negotiate, suggesting that the conflict could end peacefully. He even proposes using his own sister as leverage, revealing his complete lack of loyalty after already betraying her. Ijin dismisses the idea without hesitation, making it clear that such reasoning holds no value. Fury consumes Ingeol as he interprets this rejection as an insult to his family. In desperation, he pulls out a vial of deadly poison and hurls it forward, believing it can dissolve flesh instantly and guarantee his escape. Ijin counters effortlessly, slicing through the air with movements sharper than any blade. He misses Ingeol by inches, but obliterates another tree behind him. Confusion and terror overwhelm Ingeol as Ijin continues his pursuit at an unhurried pace. Every strike narrowly misses him, but destroys the forest around them. He finally realizes that Ijin is deliberately toying with him, turning the chase into a cruel game. Despite the terror, Ingeol refuses to surrender and pushes his body to its absolute limit, racing toward the safe house. Once satisfied, Ijin watches Ingeol flee and calmly tells Muyang that their prey has completely fallen into the trap. Muyang questions the decision to let him escape, but Aigen already has a more painful fate planned. Muyang confirms that the Moonlight Pearls are secured, solving their financial problems. At the safe house, Ingeol stumbles in relief as he sees his father and sister. Daisen Jiang confronts Inhwa, demanding the truth. Ingeol throws himself at his father, begging for mercy. Daisen Jiang's expression hardens as he condemns his son for abandoning his sister. Desperate to shift blame, Ingeol accuses Igion of stealing the Moonlight Pearls and causing multiple deaths. Daesan Jiang grows suspicious due to the absence of any pursuers. As Ingeol tries to explain, Daesan Jiang suddenly places a hand filled with inner energy on his chest. In a decisive moment, he executes his son. Inhwa watches in horror as blood spills from Ingeol's mouth while he reaches out toward his father, dying in disbelief. Daesan Jiang has always known his son is reckless, but he never imagined that the boy would deceive his own father out of pure greed. In choosing selfish ambition, Ingeol betrays his own blood. As Daesan watches the life fade from his son's eyes, the weight of that betrayal becomes painfully clear. The responsibility of ending his own son's life falls entirely on him. When Ingeol's body collapses to the ground, Daesan Jiang accepts the harsh reality of his choice. He understands that the Moonlight Pearls must be hidden nearby, but he also senses that his son had been planning something far greater. From the treetops above, Ijin and Muyang silently witness the moment Ingeol's fate is sealed. Muyang confirms that he has already sent an anonymous letter, along with a map of the safe house. Ijin calmly watches events unfold, knowing everything is proceeding according to his design. Inside the safe house, Dae-san-jang addresses a waiting guest and acknowledges the delay, explaining that a traitor needed to be dealt with first. With the situation exposed, the guest finally speaks, questioning whether Dae-san-jang intends to side with the Southern Mounting Alliance. Dae-san-jang presses forward, insisting that the North Sky Overlord family has already turned against them. With the intelligence he possesses, he believes he can still be useful. Before the discussion can continue, a group of martial artists bursts inside, demanding to know their identities. Their leader steps forward and reveals that suspicious information has already been reported. The intruder identifies himself as Noe Ban, military advisor of the North Sky Overlord family. The accusation catches Dae-san-jang off guard. From his perspective, it is his family that has been betrayed, not the other way around. Desperate, he tries to explain that the North Sky Overlord family supported the righteous sword sect, leading him to believe he had been abandoned. Noe Ban dismisses this explanation without hesitation, calling it nonsense. Dae-san-jang realizes if the North Sky Overlord family is not responsible, then someone else must be manipulating events. His thoughts race back to his son's suspicions. The name Ejian surfaces in his mind. Realization strikes, but before he can react, a blade pierces his throat. The attack is so swift that no one has time to respond. Inhwa only understands what is happening a moment too late. Dae-san-jang turns in disbelief as the sword sinks deeper, struggling to comprehend who could strike so efficiently. He wonders if the North Sky Overlord family has always possessed such a terrifying warrior. Inhwa screams as her father falls, while Noe Ban shifts his attention toward the other man and issues a cold warning, making it clear that interference would be unwise. Attention soon turns to Inhwa when a masked figure presses a blade against her neck, waiting for instruction. Noe Ban gives the order without hesitation. Flames soon engulf the safe house, sealing the fate of the center of Palm Clan. Later, Muyong plans to hire 50 trustworthy individuals to operate the new Wind Manor as a cover, ensuring no suspicion arises. Ijin approves the plan. The businesses and clients once controlled by the center of Palm Clan are to be seized, with Muyong overseeing everything. However, attention from the 4 overlord families must be avoided. Muyong acknowledges the weight of the task and accepts it. Muyong briefly questions whether this ending truly satisfies Ijin. The answer is firm. Those who commit crimes deserve punishment. Ijin holds no sympathy for them. Still, Ijin reflects on his past. His journey begins at the age of 10, when the world is still innocent and unknown. Back then, all he wanted was to make his parents proud, unaware that Muyong had been following him all along. The DONGHUA his father once described turns out to be nothing but a fantasy. As he watches the house burn from the trees, the lesson becomes clear. Survival is the only truth. Learning how not to be deceived, how to deceive others, and how to endure at any cost. Muyong quietly worries about the wounds Ijin has carried over the years, and hopes they have not hardened his heart completely. Ijin acknowledges that he has changed and is growing into adulthood. Yet the DONGHUA remains the same place where the righteous are mocked and the wicked thrive. He sees no hope for change. Still, he resolves not to chase dreams like his father did, but to turn those ideals into reality himself. The next morning at New Wind Manor, news spreads of the center of Palm Clan destruction. It is explained that Dae-san-jang is punished for betraying the North Sky Overlord family. Elsewhere, gratitude grows toward Ijin for ensuring everyone's survival, while questions arise about his origins. Soon, attention shifts to the Heavenly Dragon Grand Tournament. Cheryon watches from the crowd as Ijin stands in the arena. She cheers for him, and he responds with a calm, warm smile. The first preliminary match is announced. A famous fistmaster steps forward as his opponent. As Ijin's name echoes across the arena, his calm presence sharpens. He raises his hand and prepares to begin. Hyuk Lee makes the first move, throwing a powerful punch straight at Ijin. Pretending to be weak, Ijin drops to the ground at the last second. The punch slams into the arena floor instead, smashing the tiles apart. Suddenly, Ijin jumps back to his feet and starts running away to create distance. The crowd immediately erupts in laughter. Without hesitation, Hyuk Lee launches a wide horizontal kick toward Ijin. Once again, Ijin barely escapes, rolling underneath the attack. He flips backward and lands in a crouched position. The audience reacts with surprise as they recognize the donkey roll, a technique viewed as humiliating and desperate among martial artists. Several people shout warnings, claiming Ijin will be seriously injured or killed if he continues like this. Despite the harsh reactions from the crowd, Hyuk Lee feels a growing sense of unease. Although Ijin appears clumsy, every movement allows him to dodge attacks by a hair's breadth. Still, Ijin never counters even once. Then, in a sudden shift, Ijin's arm glows with faint violet inner energy as he extends his fist. To Lee Hayak's shock, the fist gently taps his forehead. The impact feels insignificant, but realization strikes instantly. Ijin has been controlling the entire fight. Hyuk Lee collapses to the ground, and spectators mock the weak-looking strike, with some claiming even a child could punch harder. To everyone's surprise, blood pours from Hyuk Lee's mouth as he loses all strength, completely unable to continue. Confusion spreads as people whisper about what just happened. Some accuse the match of being fixed. Others speculate that Hyuk Lee suffers from ki deviation, a deadly condition for martial artists. Arena officials rush to inspect Hyuk Lee. In the stands, Chaeryeon watches in disbelief, unable to understand how the fight ends so suddenly. The officials announce Ijin as the winner. The crowd responds with loud boos and insults, urging him to withdraw out of shame. Ijin, however, walks away with a confident smile, leaving Chaeryeon wondering what he is planning next. Later that evening, attention shifts to a lavish gambling pavilion. Muyong places an enormous bet of 100,000 silver on Ijin's victory. The gambling house manager looks confused, struggling to understand why anyone would wager so much on a fighter who barely survived his first match. Muyong and his companions respond only with silence. An elder also places a large bet, attracted by the incredibly high odds. If Ijin wins, the payout multiplies many times over. Another elder places a rare blood poison pearl on the table as a wager. The manager pauses to verify its value before accepting it. Curiosity grows among the group when it becomes clear that not everyone is betting on Ijin. It is revealed that the bet is placed on a mysterious participant known as the Nameless Wanderer. The name catches everyone off guard. Even experienced martial masters appear unfamiliar with it. Moments later, it becomes known that the Nameless Wanderer is entering the Heavenly Dragon Grand Tournament as well. The scene moves to New Wind Manor, where embarrassment spreads as the identity behind the Nameless Wanderer becomes clear. The strange name draws mixed reactions, with some mocking it as awkward and poorly chosen. As evening settles, the group gathers for a meal with Ijin and Chaeryeon. Tension rises as Ijin reacts with frustration over another powerful figure entering the tournament. Chaeryeon feels slightly out of place, especially under the sharp gaze of one elder who finds her familiar. Comparisons are made between Chaeryeon and someone from the past, causing shocked reactions and awkward laughter. Eventually, the focus returns to the tournament. It becomes clear that some participants have entered not for fame or wealth, but to test themselves against Ijin. Rather than feeling anger, Ijin welcomes the challenge with renewed confidence. Later that night, Ijin and Chaeryeon stand together on a bridge overlooking a quiet lake. Moonlight reflects across the water as Ijin reveals his worries about winning the tournament. Victory is essential for securing funds and establishing his sect. Ijin casually explains that he plans to strengthen himself by eating massive amounts of meat, claiming his martial art converts it into pure energy. Chaeryeon silently doubts such an ability could exist. Suddenly, a cloaked figure appears on a nearby rooftop, accompanied by a messenger eagle. The visitor delivers a warning, implying Ijin has crossed an unseen boundary. Ijin remains calm, fully aware of who sent the message. He dismisses the threat and declares his intention to dominate the martial world. The eagle takes flight, carrying the message away. The scene changes to a quiet city gate where an eagle lands on a man's arm. The man reads the letter and immediately understands its meaning. Learning that his son has entered the Dragon and Phoenix tournament, he wonders if Ijin has finally grown into his own path. With calm eyes matching Ijin's, he reflects on the realization that his son now aims to conquer the DONGHUA. The next morning, Surin stands at the doorway while his wife notices the carrier hawk and immediately understands that the message must concern their son. Surin reacts calmly and reveals that Ijin has decided to conquer the DONGHUA. His wife accepts this without surprise, believing that Ijin has every right to hold such an ambition and dream big. Surin, however, believes this dream should never be fulfilled. He knows that DONGHUA is ruled not only by open villains, but also by so-called righteous factions who are no different beneath the surface. Surin reflects that it has been 20 years since they entered seclusion. He proposes that they leave and head toward the Central Plains. Muyong reports to Ijin that suspicious information has surfaced. Following previous orders, they have been exchanging intelligence with a dark arms merchant. According to him, someone plans to sell 300 rounds of heaven-shattering thunder. Ijin immediately recognizes the weapon as the same once used by the Righteous Alliance. He decides to track the dark arms merchant and identify the seller. Deep in the mountains, a man moves carefully and accepts that after selling the heaven-shattering thunder, there is no turning back. For years, he has lived a double life as an elder of the North Sky Overlord family while secretly serving the Flying Swallow Association. After the failure of the Dragon and Phoenix tournament, the association shifts all blame onto him, using him as a scapegoat. The man is given one final chance and ordered to detonate the heaven-shattering thunder during the Heavenly Dragon Grand Tournament. But manipulating the previous tournament nearly cost him everything, and now the Grand Tournament gathers the strongest masters in the land. Worse, Noiban already suspects him due to past incidents. Whether he fails or succeeds, the man realizes his fate is sealed. Suddenly, a swordsman launches a surprise horizontal slash. The man barely avoids death by stepping aside at the last instant. At that moment, Ijian appears, landing lightly on floating debris in the river despite his weight. Wearing a mask, with Muyong standing silently behind him, Ijian casually points out that an elder of the North Sky Overlord family caused the Dragon and Phoenix incident. Panic overtakes the man as he demands to know who these masked figures are. Ijian introduces himself as a representative of the Righteous Alliance, shocking everyone present. Moments later, Ijian places his hand on the assassin's head. Without warning, violent energy erupts from within the man, and then his body explodes from the inside. Blood and water scatter into the air as the river turns red. Muyong concludes the man was implanted with a self-destruction mechanism. Ijian expresses deep contempt for the Flying Swallow Association and turns his attention back to the man, implying he understands the true nature of the organization. The man pretends ignorance, but the truth is obvious. Ijian reveals he prepared something special. He forces a small green pill down the man's throat, warning that it will cause unbearable pain. The poison takes effect instantly, and the man collapses and begs for mercy, promising to reveal everything. 12 years ago, the association recruited him and helped him rise to elder status within the North Sky Overlord family. Since then, he has followed their orders, never truly knowing anyone else within the organization. Disgusted, Ijian issues 2 commands. The man must report all internal information from the North Sky Overlord family, and he must immediately relay every order from the Flying Swallow Association. Compliance will guarantee his survival. Though the man doubts such a fate, he has no choice but to accept. He realizes he is now trapped as a double agent under Ijian's control. Muyong questions the association's true goal, remarking that destroying the tournament with explosives seems excessive. Ijian concludes that a far greater plan must exist and orders Muyong to stay focused. The Heavenly Dragon Grand Tournament continues the next day. Ijian continues acting weak and foolish, winning matches through what appears to be pure luck. Those who bet against him complain bitterly, while many spectators dismiss his victories. Once again, Ijian advances, shocking everyone as he reaches the main tournament. For the first round of the main tournament, Ijian appears in a red robe. The audience wonders whether his earlier wins were luck or hidden skill. Cheon watches in awe, realizing how far he has come. The arena fills with elite figures, including heirs of powerful clans and representatives from major factions. It is announced that Ijian, now revealed as a martial artist from Divine Wind Manor, will face Chusa of the Venomous Blade sect. Chusa openly mocks him, but Ijian remains calm. Cheon worries about poison techniques and urges caution. Ijian reassures her internally, knowing there is no need to hide anymore. From this point forward, no more deception is required. The real battles are about to begin. His gaze shifts toward the VIP pavilion, where a man watches eagerly. Ijian feels the same anticipation. At last, the stage is set for a true clash against one of the top martial masters of the Central Plains, the infamous Demon Sword. Chusa, known as the Deadly Poisonous Sword, fully lives up to his terrifying reputation. His sword is always coated with lethal venom, making even the slightest contact fatal. His cruel nature makes him widely hated, and many lives have already been taken by his poisonous blade, and fear follows him wherever he goes. As the match approaches, spectators watch with concern. Some feel pity for Ijian, wondering why such a young fighter chooses to face someone so infamous. Cheon observes quietly, uncertain whether the rumors surrounding Chusa are exaggerated. Chusa steps forward confidently, his venomous sword gleaming. He carries himself like a predator, certain of victory. Ijian, however, remains calm and relaxed. Rather than showing fear, he displays a faint smile, clearly unimpressed. He openly belittles Chusa's reliance on poison, implying that true swordsmanship does not need such tricks. This provocation only fuels Chusa's bloodlust. Without warning, Chusa launches a lightning-fast attack. His movement is so quick that it appears as if Ijian has already been struck. In the next instant, everything changes. Ijian moves even faster. With precise timing, he strikes Chusa's wrist, disrupting the attack and forcing the sword to slip from Chusa's hand. Before anyone can process what happens, Ijian seizes the fallen blade and drives it straight into Chusa's shoulder. A horrifying scream fills the air as the venom takes effect. Ijian shows no hesitation or mercy. Locking eyes with his opponent, his expression turns cold and ruthless. In one smooth motion, he drags the blade outward, severing Chusa's arm completely. The entire exchange lasts only a few seconds. Chusa never gets the chance to respond. He collapses to the ground, bleeding heavily. Ijian stands over him without pity, making it clear that Chusa's days as a swordsman are over. The once feared deadly poisonous sword is utterly defeated. The arena falls silent for a brief moment before erupting into thunderous cheers. Shock spreads among the spectators as they struggle to understand what they just witnessed. Some question how the fight ended so quickly, while others explain that Ijian finished Chusa with a single decisive strike. Among the elite spectators, one rises abruptly. unable to hide his astonishment. He questions Ijin's background and wonders how someone from the unknown Divine Wind Manor possesses such overwhelming power. Beside him, the other remains calm, as though she had anticipated this outcome. Elsewhere, another watches in deep thought. He already knows that Ijin is far from ordinary. This match only confirms his suspicions. He begins to wonder where Ijin truly comes from, and whether winning the Heavenly Dragon Grand Tournament is even his real objective. Later that day, Ijin and Cherion visit an inn to eat. The atmosphere is lively, filled with people praising Chusa's defeat and celebrating Ijin's performance. Many believe the fallen swordsman deserved his fate, while others commend Ijin for revealing his hidden strength. Ijin takes pleasure in the recognition and finds the sudden popularity amusing. Cherion observes him closely and realizes how different he is from others who reach this stage. Most finalists inspire fear or distance, but Ijin remains approachable and warm. To her, he feels truly extraordinary. Nearby, people discuss another mysterious finalist known as the Nameless Wanderer. They remark that no one has ever seen his face or removed his hat. Stories circulate about how his sword appears only for an instant before returning to its sheath, with each opponent defeated in a blink. His calm efficiency stands in sharp contrast to Ijin's seemingly lucky journey to the finals. Ijin listens quietly and senses something unsettling beneath the excitement. While Cherion mistakes his unease for nervousness, the real issue is far simpler. He realizes he has forgotten his money pouch. Despite the situation, the moment turns lighthearted when Cherion decides to treat him, leading to playful chaos over food choices. Unexpectedly, Byokwa Seol appears and offers to pay for the meal. She congratulates Cherion for her past victory and expresses gratitude toward Ijin for his role in stopping the demonic threat during the previous tournament. Although Igyeon brushes off the praise, Byokwa Seol clearly sees through his indifference. The day of the final round arrives, and the tournament hall fills to capacity. The atmosphere feels heavier and more intense than before. Spectators marvel at how unpredictable this year's tournament has been, with no one expecting these two fighters to reach the final stage. Cherion senses the shift in energy and admits her concern. She learns more about the final opponent's terrifying reputation. The demon sword, long considered unrivaled among his peers, finally stands on the arena floor. Ijin faces Muak Cheon, the infamous demon sword, who entered the tournament as the Nameless Wanderer. The crowd roars with excitement, heavily favoring the mysterious warrior. Muak Cheon radiates battle-hardened resolve, treating the match as a true test of strength rather than mere competition. Ijin closes his eyes briefly, centering himself. He draws the demonic blade he has carried for over a decade, a legacy from his mother. Dark energy surges as the sword is revealed, filling the air with oppressive power. In the next heartbeat, Ijin vanishes and reappears before Muak Cheon, his blade already in motion. At last, the long-awaited clash begins. The moment their swords collide, a powerful formation art activates. Only a small group connected to Ijin remains able to witness what truly unfolds. Everyone else sees a false battle created by illusion. Muak Cheon overflows with anticipation, viewing this clash as the definition of a true fight. Cherion feels stunned, having never witnessed a formation capable of completely altering reality itself. The elder reveals that such techniques originate from an ancient master of battle formations and are never meant to be exposed openly. Only those inside the formation can observe the genuine combat. Cherion begins to question whether Ijin and Muak Cheon reached this stage without ever revealing their real strength. The elder urges complete focus, emphasizing that this confrontation will never happen again in one's lifetime. Inside the arena, Ijin brings his massive blade crashing down, appearing to split the demon sword in two. The impact obliterates the ground beneath them. In the next instant, Muak Cheon reappears behind Ijin, filled with exhilaration and prepared to strike. Ijin reacts immediately, blocking the ambush with perfect timing. The two exchange relentless blows, sword after sword colliding with violent force. Ijin refuses to retreat even as the pace intensifies. Muak Cheon thrives in the chaos, acknowledging Ijin's skill while pushing him harder. Then, Ijin senses danger as Muak Cheon stops holding back. A strike lands, drawing first blood. The wound slices across Ijin's left hand, staining his white robe crimson. The observers instantly realize the gravity of the situation. Ijin remains composed, his gaze locked forward, blood dripping freely as the killing intent in the air sharpens. Muak Cheon radiates lethal excitement, making it clear that his intent to kill is genuine. He demands Ijin reveal his true martial art or face death. Ijin tightens his grip as a dark, unfamiliar inner energy surges from within him. A smile forms as a crimson aura wraps around his body like a living flame. The sword ignites with overwhelming power. Cherion recognizes the energy instantly. It is demonic. Her long-held suspicions solidify as she realizes Ijin's undeniable connection to the demonic cult. Ijin begins a chant as the demonic path awakens through the wind. Muak Cheon reacts with unrestrained excitement, knowing he is about to witness the legendary 9 Calamities demon blade forms, a technique every demonic cultivator dreams of seeing once. The first form erupts as Ijin commands the wind itself, sending a devastating strike forward. Muak Cheon gathers his inner energy to block, but the attack tears through his defense and slices into his shoulder. Despite possessing less internal energy, Ijin's technique displays terrifying power. He immediately unleashes the second form, summoning thunder from the heavens. Lightning crashes down, annihilating the ground beneath Muak Cheon. As dust fills the air, Ijin waits, and Muak Cheon bursts through the destruction, leaping skyward with unwavering resolve. The two clash midair, trading blows evenly despite the gap in cultivation. Ijin holds firm, wielding both the sword and demonic technique inherited from his mother. His crimson energy barrier collides with Muak Cheon's dark purple aura, showcasing centuries of battle experience and monstrous strength. Cheon trembles as she watches, realizing her own power feels insignificant before such beings. Ijin advances to the fifth form, manifesting a massive blood dragon forged from demonic energy. With a single command, the dragon charges and devours Muak Cheon, slamming into the ground with a catastrophic explosion. The onlookers attempt to move forward, but the elder restrains them, confident in the outcome. When the dust settles, Muak Cheon remains standing, shocked and bleeding, leaning on his sword. He looks up to see Ijin hovering calmly in the sky. Instead of fear, laughter escapes him as he recognizes the bloodline flowing through Ijin. Ijin stabilizes his breathing, having pushed his limits. Muak Cheon prepares to end the battle with his ultimate sword technique, the move that earned him the title Demon Sword. The Elder reveals that only the seventh and final form of the 9 Calamities Demon Blade can counter it, but using it risks complete consumption by the Demon Blade. Muak Cheon's energy erupts in massive waves, compressing into a devastating sword arc. Ijin responds by invoking the seventh form, channeling every trace of demonic energy into a single strike. Elsewhere, Surin walks through a field of flowers beside his wife, who reflects that Ijin's ambition comes from her bloodline. Once known as Rakshasa, she explains that blood cannot lie, and destruction flows naturally through him. Back in the arena, Ijin charges forward, but his gaze suddenly shifts to Carrion. She reminds him of his father, a man who valued righteousness and dreamed of a better world. That memory shatters the demonic frenzy. Enraged by the hesitation, Muak Cheon unleashes his attack. Ijin meets it head-on after canceling his demonic energy entirely. As the strongest strike collides with him, a calm, flowing inner energy emerges, serene and pure, wrapping around his sword like water. Muyong stands frozen in shock as he witnesses his young master unsheath his father's sword. Abandoning the Hellblade without hesitation, Ijin lets it crash into the ground, where it embeds itself deeply. Cheon immediately recognizes the sword in Ijin's hand and realizes its significance. The demonic soul he summoned earlier fades away, and clarity returns to his eyes. With a calm swing, Ijin releases a serene flow of energy that follows the path of his blade like gentle water. In that moment, he embodies the ideal of righteousness his father once hoped he would become. Then, Ijin descends, striking with overwhelming precision. Muak Cheon barely comprehends what happens before the force crashes into him. The strike only grazes his arm, yet it drains his internal energy and shatters the ground beneath him. Confusion grips him as he struggles to understand what martial art Ijin is using. Mu Young and Isang Naing stand silently, witnessing the true power of the young master against such a veteran. Charyan remains motionless, unable to process how such pure and tranquil swordsmanship can exist after witnessing Ijin's demonic techniques. Huayong Yang, however, remains calm, convinced the battle has already ended. As expected, the formation dissolves and the barren illusion vanishes with a thunderous collapse. The arena returns to its original state. Ijin remains upright, gripping his father's sword, his white robe soaked in blood. Opposite him, Muak Cheon kneels, surrounded by drifting dust. The sudden change stuns the crowd, who erupt into confusion as they struggle to understand what they just witnessed. Huayong Yang confirms that the formation art has ended and reality has returned. Recognition spreads rapidly as the crowd realizes the kneeling man is the nameless wanderer. His identity is finally exposed. Muak Cheon lowers his head, focusing on sealing the wound in his arm as the crowd reacts in shock. The revelation sends waves through the arena. Calmly, Ijin returns Muak Cheon's bamboo hat, extending it without hostility. His expression remains gentle and sincere, carrying both his father's righteous ideals and his mother's demonic legacy. Muak Cheon reflects inwardly, realizing that if Ijin had unleashed the seventh demonic form earlier, death would have been inevitable. Accepting defeat, his understanding deepens. Losing after witnessing the legendary technique feels more like honor than shame. Silence grips the arena as the nameless wanderer acknowledges his loss. Leaders from powerful factions struggle to grasp the magnitude of what has happened. Among all spectators, Cherry-Yeon alone truly understands the events within the formation. Relief finally softens her expression as she realizes Ijin has survived. The announcer's voice breaks the silence, declaring Ijin the winner of the Heavenly Dragon Grand Tournament. Cheers explode across the arena as a new hero is born, the youngest champion in the tournament's history. Despite the celebration, Ijin's thoughts drift. He once promised never to wield his father's sword before Cherry-Yeon, yet he used it to both defeat and save Muak Cheon. That night, a grand banquet celebrates the tournament's conclusion. People recognize Ijin instantly, amazed by his youth and victory. Admirers gather around him as he walks with Cherry-Yeon, praising his appearance and charm. Ijin accepts the attention effortlessly, clearly inheriting his parents' striking looks. Cherry-Yeon observes quietly, feeling slightly out of place after dedicating her life solely to sword training. Ijin suggests enjoying the feast without restraint, brushing off concern for his injuries. His casual confidence leaves Cherry-Yeon uncertain whether he is always joking. Soon after, the head of the North Sky Overlord family approaches Cherry-Yeon, proposing an alliance through marriage with his grandson. The suggestion stuns her, and murmurs ripple through the crowd as people speculate on political intentions. Cherry-Yeon struggles to respond, overwhelmed by the pressure. Before she can answer, Ijin steps in, casually declaring that Cherry-Yeon belongs to him. The bold interruption shocks everyone nearby. Some view it as disrespect, while others think he has gone too far. Lim Cheonce remains silent, studying Ijin carefully. Ijin continues with unwavering confidence, openly expressing his feelings and firmly asking for the proposal to be withdrawn. His relaxed tone contrasts sharply with the cold intensity in his gaze. The onlookers grow furious, accusing Ijin of arrogance after winning the tournament. He responds with absolute resolve, questioning whether strength grants the right to claim someone against her will. His words ignite further outrage, with elders criticizing his attitude and immaturity. Internally, Ijin reflects bitterly on how adults demand obedience while clinging to outdated values. Cherry-Yeon notices his unusual agitation, sensing something deeper beneath his behavior. As tensions rise, someone calls out to Ijin. His gaze immediately shifts toward the voice. Emerging from the crowd is his father, Surin, the once exiled martial hero. Ijin greets him casually, without ceremony. Mockery erupts from the crowd, but Surin's wife, Seol-Hayu, swiftly shuts it down with sharp contempt. Seol-Hayu's eyes glow with excitement at seeing her son again, and her beauty is overwhelming. She shares the same fate as her husband because she was cast out of the heavenly demon cult after falling in love with him. The surrounding elders stiffen at her presence, instinctively feeling threatened. Even Lim Cheonzi senses her domineering aura. Cherry-Yeon observes quietly, struggling to believe these two youthful figures are truly Ijin's parents. One of the elders attempts to justify himself, claiming confusion and blaming youthful rudeness. Lim Cheonzi immediately intervenes, making it clear that insulting someone's parents is unacceptable, regardless of circumstance. In that moment, he fully grasps the depth of Ijin's background. He acknowledges fault, restrains the situation, and withdraws. Internally, he reflects on Seol-Hayu's terrifying presence and Surin's unusual calm. Though Surin appears ordinary, something about him feels unsettling. Lim Cheonce resolves to investigate further before departing, leaving the family reunited. Once alone, Surin immediately scolds Ijin for his reckless behavior. Ijin responds with defiance, insisting he has done nothing wrong. His frustration pours out, rooted in years of resentment toward his father's rigid beliefs about DONGHUA. Surin listens carefully, his eyes sharp yet conflicted. He longs to reconnect with his son, but the distance between them remains painfully clear. Cherry-Yeon quietly observes, slowly understanding the cause of Ijin's unusual behavior. He is not angry at strangers. He wants his father to hear everything he has held inside. Seeing the tension, Seol-Hayu steps between them, placing herself firmly in the middle. She cannot ignore how much her son has grown. When Ijin left, he was only 10 years old. Now, he stands as a fully grown man. Seol-Hayu gently remarks how much Ijin has matured during their separation. Ijin softens, suggesting they return together, knowing there is much to talk about. They travel back to the Divine Wind Manor. Instead of meeting old subordinates, they sit with the leader of the righteous sword sect and his wife. Gratitude fills the room as Ijin is praised for saving their family. Surin responds politely, hoping his son caused no trouble. Seol-Hayu compliments Cherry-Yeon, praising her kindness and beauty. Cherry-Yeon, seated nervously, feels overwhelmed as the situation takes an unexpected turn. Praise continues as Ijin's character is exalted. Normally, he would joke, but he avoids looking at his father entirely. Cherry-Yeon notices the tension. Seol-Hayu asks about Cherry-Yeon and how she met Ijin. Before Cherry-Yeon can answer, Ijin casually summarizes their encounters, mentioning the streets and a bar in a tone that sounds careless. Cheon reacts with visible frustration, embarrassed by his blunt phrasing. Surin reminds them about proper boundaries, stressing decorum between men and women. Ijin acknowledges the remark but remains visibly irritated. His resentment toward his father's outdated ideals remains unresolved. Later that night, under moonlight at the Divine Wind Manor, Ijin walks across the surface of a serene pond. His steps barely disturb the water, leaving soft ripples behind. Cheon watches from the bridge, amazed by his effortless mastery. At the center, Ijin idly plays with falling petals, appearing calm while wrestling with inner turmoil. To Cheon, he looks like a peerless master trying to steady his heart. She wonders how long it will take her to reach such a level. Ijin vents his frustration, mocking the rigid rules his father clings to. He realizes the version of DONGHUA he was taught is filled with false ideals. His anger burns openly, yet moments later, he jokes about eating as much meat as he wants, making Cheon smile. In those moments, he feels oddly childlike, and she finds that side of him endearing. Ijin continues that his father will never sit quietly while he pursues his ambitions. He swirls the wind with his inner energy, lifting petals and water effortlessly. Cheon now fully understands that his dream of conquering the world is real. He releases his energy outward, scattering water and petals without moving a muscle. His resolve is firm. He intends to challenge DONGHUA itself, even if it means clashing with his father's beliefs. Returning to the bridge, Cheon asks about his parents' strength. Ijin admits he is still weaker than his father. When asked about his mother, he reveals she is roughly equal to Surin. Cheon is stunned, praising her beauty and power. Ijin explains that his mother hid her appearance for 20 years, using special techniques to avoid trouble due to her past. Their love forced them into hiding for years. Ijin reveals that the final technique he used belonged to his mother. Cheon grows serious upon hearing of the demonic cult, but ultimately decides that a person's heart matters more than their origin. She reassures Ijin, expressing that nothing about him surprises her anymore. He smiles warmly, understanding the weight of her acceptance. Far away, within the Cheoma Palace, news arrives of Seol Hayu's return to the martial world. The heavenly demon listens coldly, learning she has reunited with Surin and that Ijin now moves through DONGHUA with grand ambition. Reflecting on the past, he recalls casting out his second daughter and forcing her into hiding. Now, her son's rise draws her back. One figure remarks on Ijin's inherited ambition, but silence follows. Jinchun Yu sneers inwardly, dismissing Ijin as an arrogant fool. The next morning, Hwayoung Yang works quietly in the garden at the Divine Wind Manor, carefully pulling weeds from the soil with her bare hands. Isang Naing stands nearby and notices her method, wondering why she bothers removing weeds by hand instead of using inner energy. Hwayoung Yang responds lightly, explaining that the joy lies in doing the work herself. To her, effort made with one's own hands carries meaning and satisfaction. Not far away, Muak Cheon sits in silence, deep in thought. His mind lingers on his defeat at the hands of Ijin, a young man barely 20 years old. Sensing his heavy mood, Hwayoung Yang approaches and explains that his loss does not diminish him as a martial artist. Ijin's techniques simply exist on a different plane. Muak Cheon remains expressionless, fully aware that if Ijin had unleashed the 9 Calamities demon blade without restraint, he would not have survived. Curiosity eventually overtakes him, and he wonders about the final technique Ijin used. Isang Nang reveals that the technique is known as the Celestial Comet Sword, originating from the Whirlwind clan. Muak Cheon is visibly stunned, having never heard of either the technique or the clan. Isang Naing explains that the Whirlwind clan stays hidden from DONGHUA affairs, yet all 9 great clans and even the Orthodox Alliance owe them a great debt. He adds that he personally protected Ijin's father for 20 years, as Surin is the rightful successor of the Whirlwind clan. Given Muak Cheon origins in the heavenly demon cult, he should understand the weight such a clan carries. As Muak Cheon processes this revelation, Ijin arrives casually, admitting that even he does not know every detail of his lineage. He remarks that it must have been the first time Muak Cheon met his father and explains that his origins never mattered much to him. When asked if the final strike belonged to his father's martial art, Ijin confirms it, adding that it has been a long time since anyone pushed him so hard in battle. Elsewhere in the manor, Surin stands by a window, gazing out at the vast Divine Wind Manor Ijin built. Seol Hayu approaches from behind and embraces him, sensing unease in his posture. Surin wonders aloud how Ijin managed to fund such a grand estate. Seol Hayu reassures him gently, expressing certainty that their son would never exploit innocent people. She speaks with pride, clearly admiring the man Ijin has become. Surin then voices concern about Ijin's impossible ambition and asks Seol Hayu to let him handle matters involving their son. She disagrees firmly as to her. That very ambition makes Ijin who he is. She believes that trying to forcibly stop him could result in losing him forever. Though Surin remains serious, he softens, brushing his hand across her face. Seol Hayu clings to him, silently wishing to protect both her husband and her son, even if it means the world of Donghua must be drenched in blood. Later that day, Ijin brings Cherion to a small, unusual restaurant on the edge of the village. Cherion senses that his thoughts are troubled, likely still weighed down by matters involving his father. Their attention shifts when a commotion erupts nearby. A group of men confronts the restaurant owner's wife, demanding repayment. She pleads desperately, explaining that business has been poor. Ijin immediately recognizes them as loan sharks. He explains to Cherion that they belong to the Three Heads faction, led by the infamous Yang Shim, a ruthless man secretly backed by the North Sky Overlord family. Cherion is shocked, unable to believe such a respected family would support criminals. The woman clutches her child in terror, regretting ever borrowing money. The faction leader coldly threatens to seize the restaurant. The owner soon emerges, a large man wielding a cleaver. His wife explains the rising costs and hidden manipulation of supplies. Yang Shim proposes a solution, offering the owner work under them for a low wage. The owner refuses, having already rejected such an offer before. Yang Shim's patience snaps, issuing veiled threats against the man's family. Fear grips the restaurant, yet the owner stands firm, refusing to submit. At that moment, Ijin intervenes calmly, remarking that the offered wage insults a man of such skill. His casual tone enrages Yang Shim, who recognizes him as the tournament champion and mocks his fearlessness. He orders his men to ignore Ijin and destroy the restaurant. One thug storms inside, smashing tables and driving customers out. The owner's young son bravely tries to stop him, pleading through fear. The thug responds with cruelty, grabbing the child and throwing him toward his father. He then draws his sword, advancing without mercy. Before anyone can react, Ijin flicks a chopstick through the air. It pierces straight through the thug's head in a single motion. The man collapses instantly, lifeless. The restaurant falls into stunned silence. Cherion freezes, shocked by Ijin's sudden brutality. Yang Shim and the owner stare in disbelief. Ijin remains seated and calmly reaches for another chopstick, infusing it with inner energy. He casually offers to settle the debt himself, making it clear he intends to speak with them further. The chopstick Ijin throws is now buried deep inside a wooden pillar, with blood splashed across the surface. The man who kicked the child earlier lies dead on the floor, a hole torn clean through his head. Members of the Three Heads faction freeze in shock, unable to accept that one of their own is killed so easily with nothing but a chopstick. With a calm and unsettling smile, Ijin breaks the silence by expressing that 40 silver is an insultingly low price. He then presents the restaurant owner with a new offer, proposing a monthly wage of 1,000 silver to work under him. The offer sounds unreal to the owner and completely absurd to Yang Shim, who cannot believe a young man barely past 20 can offer such wealth. Before either can react, Ijin escalates further by implying that if the payment is still insufficient, he will personally deal with the leader of the Dragonfang clan. The owner is visibly shaken, as the mere mention of that name once inspired terror. That man turned violent long ago and vanished, leaving chaos behind. The owner lost his family during that period and wandered with revenge consuming him, yet the enemy was never found. In time, he chose peace and built a quiet life to protect his new family. Yang Shim openly doubts that a young martial artist could track down such a dangerous figure or make such promises. Ijin remains silent, waiting. Cherion reflects that because Ijin's tournament victory was shown through illusion arts, he does not appear as terrifying as past champions. Yang Shim then corners the owner, forcing a choice between joining the Three Heads faction or repaying the debt. Refusal means losing the restaurant and being cast onto the streets. The owner stands still, gripping his cleaver, thoughts spiraling. Losing his family again is unthinkable. Accepting Yang Shim's offer feels like surrender, yet it promises endless suffering. Ijin interrupts his hesitation, radiating confidence and assuring that the faction will be dealt with cleanly. His aura coils outward, and his grin carries quiet menace. The terms suddenly feel fair. Despite his youth, Ijin somehow knows everything, and his conviction feels real. With his family in mind, the owner finally accepts. A bald thug reacts in disbelief, confirming whether the owner truly sides with a so-called brat. He acknowledges Ijin's strength, but relies on the backing of the North Sky Overlord family. In an instant, Ijin appears behind him and drives a chopstick through his neck. Blood erupts as the man collapses, killed with flawless precision. Yang Shim panics and orders an attack. 3 swordsmen rush forward, but Ijin vanishes before their blades can land. He reappears above them, descending like death itself. With inner energy flooding the chopstick, he strikes once. All 3 fall simultaneously, their heads pierced before they can react. Yang Shim watches in horror as his men drop around him. The truth hits him too late. Ijin is not lucky, he is a monster. Before fear can fully settle in, a chopstick pierces Yanggu Shim's heart. There is no time to resist. Ijin locks eyes with him, delivering judgment through action alone. Pulling the weapon free, he strikes again and again until there is no chance of survival. The room falls silent. The owner shields his wife and child, staring in disbelief at the ruthless young man. When the slaughter ends, Ijin drops the blood-stained chopstick and turns away as if disposing of pests. He casually announces that no interview is needed. He praises the owner's restraint and strength, noting that he could have defeated the thugs but chose family over pride. Ijin reveals his true intention. He wants the man not as a cook, but as the head instructor of his sect. The owner is stunned. Ijin admits he came on recommendation from his most trusted companion. The truth settles in. Teaching martial arts was always his true calling. Accepting the offer, he agrees to formalize everything. Cherryon watches quietly, her expression softening. She sees Ijin steadily advancing toward his impossible dream, building power piece by piece. The scene changes to the North Sky Overlord family, where a report reveals the complete disappearance of the Three Heads faction. The name Ijin surfaces again, raising suspicion. Despite this, the family dismisses the matter and shifts focus to an upcoming gathering. At the grand banquet, lanterns glow as young talents gather. Ijin and Cherryon sit calmly among the extravagance. The event feels more political than celebratory. An elder announces the appearance of the tournament's dragon and phoenix, igniting cheers. An auction begins for the chance to sit with them. As bids rise, Ijin senses something wrong beneath the surface. Though he appears indifferent, his instincts warn him that unseen intentions are already moving. The scene changes when an abrupt announcement raises the bid to 1,000 silver for the chance to sit with Cherryon. The crowd turns as Lim, the young master of the North Sky Overlord family, makes the offer. The hall grows quiet, and all other bidders withdraw. Ijin narrows his eyes as the countdown begins with no resistance. Lim deliberately looks toward Ijin, openly provoking him by displaying his immense wealth. Ijin responds with an unsettling smile. Already certain that Lim is plotting something, this confirmation satisfies him. The crowd reacts in disbelief. Spending such an enormous amount merely to sit with a tournament victor feels absurd to most present. Lim wears an arrogant smile, reinforcing his family's reputation for wealth and power. He intends to make Ijin feel the gap in their status. As the countdown nears its end, no one challenges the bid. Even those sympathetic to Ijin remain silent. Then, with complete indifference, Ijin raises his hand and increases the bid to 2,000 silver. Shock sweeps through the hall. Lim stares in disbelief, convinced that a wandering martial artist cannot possibly afford such a money. Many share the same thought, believing this move borders on insanity. Only Cherryon remains calm, observing Ijin's intent. Whispers spread as the crowd begins to question their assumptions. They had believed Ijin's tournament victory was luck rather than proof of real strength or backing. Sangi Park hesitates, unsure how to proceed, until Ijin casually prompts the continuation of the countdown. When he falters, Ijin takes control by counting down himself, shifting the pressure back onto Lim. Refusing to back down, Lim raises the bid to 2,500 silvers. Ijin immediately counters with 3,000, calmly testing how deep his rival's pockets truly go. The bidding war escalates rapidly. Lim pushes the amount to 6,000 and Cherryon begins to worry. Ijin remains unfazed and raises it to 7,000 while sipping his drink with ease. Cherryon warns him through voice transmission, urging him to stop as the amount becomes unreasonable. Ijin pauses briefly but continues, knowing she does not understand his plan. Sangi Park assumes Ijin has reached his limit, believing the tournament prize money is only 5,000 silver. Ijin then sets his cup down and decides to finish it. He shocks everyone by offering 10,000 silver. Gasps echo through the hall. Doubt spreads as people question whether such wealth is even possible. Even Cherryon shows surprise. Sangi Park realizes that even Lim would struggle to justify such an expense to his family. Lim raises the bid to 11,000 and challenges Ijin to continue. Ijin answers with 12,000 without hesitation, daring him to surrender if he cannot keep up. Tension thickens as Lim increases it to 13,000, attempting to justify his obsession with pride and masculinity. Ijin immediately pushes it to 14,000, provoking him further. Unable to endure the challenge, Lim raises it again to 15,000. At that moment, Ijin suddenly withdraws, bursting into wild laughter. The abrupt surrender leaves the entire hall stunned. Only then does Lim realize he has been trapped. Ijin regains his calm and remarks that spending 15,000 silver for an hour-long conversation is pure madness. Lim sinks into his seat, humiliated, his attempt to shame Ijin through wealth completely reversed. Sangi Park grows uneasy, knowing the fallout will affect him most. Before he can intervene, Ijin presents a genuine payment slip and demands verification. Sangi Park confirms its authenticity and questions its origin. Ijin explains that he earned it himself. When pressed further, Ijin fixes him with a cold stare, making it clear that such questioning crosses a line. Fear flashes across Sangi Park's face, and he quickly backs down, recognizing Ijin's authority as the tournament champion. The auction proceeds, and Cheryon joins Lim as required. Later that night, Sangi Park processes the funds privately, greed overtaking him. He rationalizes keeping part of the money to appease Lim. At that moment, Ijin appears silently behind him. Without warning, Ijin strikes, breaking the elder's nose and knocking him to the ground. The guards are already unconscious outside. Ijin exposes the elder's fraud and retrieves the stolen funds, explaining that his wealth comes from punishing corrupt figures like him. Sangi Park realizes too late how much Ijin truly knows. The lesson ends in pain rather than words. Later, under moonlight, Ijin and Cheryon walk together. Cheryon admits that Lim spent the hour in silence. Ijin reflects that the auction was never about her but about pride. He reveals that if it truly were about winning her, the price would have been unimaginable. He leaves her stunned as he walks ahead. The next day, Lim erupts in rage upon learning the truth. Sangi Park suggests eliminating Ijin, but Lim hesitates, realizing the consequences would be catastrophic. Rumors already spread and the damage is done. Unaware of it, Lim's only real option is retreat, as any further action will lead to ruin. Sangi Park explains that the DONGHUA is full of people who specialize in such hidden work. Lim doubts whether an ordinary assassin could truly kill the champion of the Heavenly Dragon Grand Tournament. Sangi Park reassures him that assassination is the safest and quietest method. Lim warns that exposure would mean total destruction for them both. Sangi Park insists that professional assassins never reveal their employers, even at the cost of their lives. He explains that all Lim must do is prepare the payment. Sangi Park guarantees that the secret will remain strictly between the two of them. Lim grows satisfied and believes the plan will succeed. In his mind, he also plans to silence Sangi Park afterward, believing that a dead man keeps no secrets. Outwardly loyal, Sangi Park responds with reassurance. Internally, he feels victorious, knowing the young master has already fallen into his trap. He has already abandoned the North Sky Overlord family since the previous night. That same night, Sangi Park secretly meets Suchin Bong, the spy controlled by Ijin. After brief formalities, Suchin Bong informs Sangi Park that Lim was furious during the recent gathering of young elites. He predicts that an execution order will soon be issued for Sangi Park. Sangi Park demands clarification. Suchin Bong explains calmly that Lim's temperament is well known. Throughout history, many lives have been lost over far smaller humiliations. This time will be no different. Someone must take responsibility, and Sangi Park is the most convenient scapegoat. Sangi Park questions whether 11 years of loyalty are worth nothing. Suchin Bong reveals that he faces the same fate. The North Sky Overlord family is preparing to shift the blame for the Dragon and Phoenix tournament disaster onto him as well. This realization forces Sangi Park to reflect deeply. Sensing Sangi Park's change in mindset, Suchin Bong plants the idea of revenge. He admits that he would retaliate immediately rather than accept betrayal. Sangi Park becomes convinced that Lim will abandon him over a single failure. The following day, Suchin Bong reports everything to Ijin, who is accompanied by Muyong. He explains that Sangi Park has fully committed to the plan and that an assassination request will soon be delivered to the Ghost Slayer clan. Ijin acknowledges the value of this information, recognizing the advantage of Suchin Bong's position within the North Sky Overlord family. Suchin Bong reminds Ijin of their agreement and requests the promised payment, hoping to live comfortably once everything ends. Ijin responds by implying that waiting passively is no different from awaiting death. Suchin Bong falls silent, recalling the moment Ijin first captured him. He remembers stealing an explosive artifact, witnessing Ijin slaughter a hidden organization member, and being forced to swallow a poison pill to ensure obedience. Unable to suppress his fear, Suchin Bong questions Ijin's true intention, expressing disbelief at the idea of changing the assassination target. He finds the plan absurd. Ijin shows no concern and simply tosses him the monthly antidote. Suchin Bong swallows it with resentment and leaves, caring only about survival. After his departure, Muyong comments that provoking Lim turned out to be useful. Ijin laughs and agrees, calling it a fortunate opportunity. He removes his mask and remarks that Lim likely believes the assassins are targeting Ijin himself. Ijin expresses interest in witnessing the aftermath when the truth is revealed. Muyong asks whether Sangi Park will be spared. Ijin answers firmly that Sangi Park has murdered innocents while cleaning up after Lim and deserves no mercy. He casually mentions instructing Suchin Bong to deal with Sangi Park after the mission, though it may not even be necessary. Ijin then wonders how the Ghost Slayer clan will react once they realize the true target. At the Ghost Slayer clan, a subordinate delivers a parchment to the leader, reporting a first-rate assassination request. The leader grows curious, noting that such commissions are rare. As he reads, his expression turns pale. He trembles in shock, screaming when he realizes the target is Suchin Yang of the Southern Peak Alliance. Elsewhere, beneath a glowing sunset, a waterfall parts as Ijin cultivates in solitude. Suddenly, his eyes open as Surin appears without warning. Surin questions Ijin's intentions. Ijin reveals his desire to unite the entire Donghua. Surin questions Ijin's motivation. Ijin remains firm, driven simply by desire. Surin finds the reason insufficient. Ijin stands and declares that he does not seek approval. He believes dreaming of dominance is natural for those of Donghua. Surin struggles to refute him, recalling his own failed hopes for peace. Ijin insists that no argument will sway him. Surin, acknowledging the path is filled with thorns, and asks for justification. Ijin admits he hates losing. He challenges Surin's belief about who owns Donghua, asserting that true power belongs to the hidden monsters behind past wars and their descendants. Surin questions whether Ijin truly intends to challenge them and seize Donghua. Ijin affirms without hesitation. Surin warns that unification would demand bloodshed. Ijin accepts that reality. Surin, who lacks the heart to destroy everything for peace, realizes he has become an obstacle. Ijin understands this, even if it means opposing his father. Surin feels something unfamiliar rising within him. During his exchange with Ijin, he realizes that he has rarely experienced anger this intense. As the former heir of the strongest martial clan, he trained himself to control every emotion. Losing that control unsettles him deeply. It shows how strongly his son's ambition shakes him. Surin worries that his son does not truly understand the sacrifices required. Such a path demands endless bloodshed, unbearable suffering, and irreversible loss. Surin wonders whether Ijin truly comprehends the scale of violence that will follow. Even if Ijin succeeds, Donghua would be soaked in blood and scarred forever. He tries to reason with his son and presses him to consider what the world would look like after being forcibly united. Ijin responds without hesitation, describing a future where the martial world becomes fairer and cleaner than its current corrupted state. This only fuels Surin's anger. He rejects the method outright and attempts to explain his own vision of a better martial world, one built on morality and restraint. Yet his thoughts collapse midway, leaving him silent. A heavy realization strikes Surin. He cannot clearly imagine a truly ideal Donghua. Fear settles in his heart. While Ijin passionately chases a better world, Surin himself lacks a clear image of it. Donghua has always been filled with hypocrisy, especially among the so-called righteous factions that hide greed behind noble words. Surin reflects that perhaps the Whirlwind clan withdrew from the martial world because they recognized this corruption long ago. He questions whether he ever truly believed a better Donghua existed, or if age and disappointment have eroded his ideals. Ijin senses his father's inner struggle. Although he is prepared to walk this path alone, he desperately wants Surin's support. Achieving his dream would mean far more with his father standing beside him. Surin ultimately concludes that no single person can create a perfect Donghua. Still, he hesitates to dismiss the idea completely and suggests that the world could slowly improve if people simply upheld honor and responsibility. Ijin calmly counters that no one truly lives that way. The blunt truth silences Surin. He realizes that he dreamed of change but never possessed the resolve to force it into reality. With sudden resolve, Ijin turns away and leaves. The act pains him deeply, but he believes it is necessary. Surin remains alone, trapped in thought. He fears the bloodshed Ijin may unleash, yet knows stopping him is impossible. The next day, Song trains relentlessly, determined to reclaim his former strength. Every sword strike reflects loyalty to his new lord. Ijin observes from the castle wall alongside Muyang. Muyang praises Song's dedication, noting his inner struggle to overcome his limits. Ijin agrees, confident Song will succeed. Muyang reports that protection has been arranged for Song's family, and that 50 new martial artists have been recruited. They are treated generously, following Ijin's orders. Ijin remarks that warriors rise to the value placed upon them. With Song as instructor, the group will become elite. Ijin reveals the next move. While the North Sky Overlord family and Southern Mountain Alliance clash, they will quietly expand influence from Wuhan, starting with the Ghost Slayer clan. At the Ghost Slayer clan, the leader stabs a dagger into a parchment bearing the assassination target's image. Rage consumes him as he condemns the reckless commission. Killing such a major figure would invite disaster. A subordinate reveals the source of the request: Lim of the North Sky Overlord family. The leader curses the foolishness of becoming tools in the games of spoiled heirs. Suddenly, everyone senses a powerful presence. An old man enters the inner chamber without triggering a single defense. His aura alone reveals mastery beyond ordinary limits. The sect leader immediately understands the danger. The old man identifies himself as belonging to the Southern Mountain Alliance and confirms that the sect accepted a contract. The leader attempts deflection, but the old man remains unmoved and demands the client's identity, a subordinate objects, citing sect rules. In an instant, the man is killed. The old man issues another demand. When refusal continues, more executions follow in rapid succession. 5 heads fall before the blade returns to its sheath. Faced with annihilation, the sect leader finally reveals the truth. The client is Lim of the North Sky Overlord family. That same night, Lim stands alone in a forest beside a freshly buried grave. He feels no regret. He has ordered Ijin's death. Unaware that the contract has been altered, he murders Sangi Park to erase the last witness. Using inner energy, he seals the body beneath flawless earth. Confident the secret is buried forever, he waits for news of Ijin's death. He never realizes how close death already is. A calm voice emerges from the shadows. Ijin stands nearby, composed and unreadable. Lim turns in shock. Ijin's gaze settles on the grave, the soil packed perfectly flat. Even then, Lim's pride remains intact, hardened by privilege and arrogance. He does not yet understand that everything has already collapsed around him. Lim stands with firm confidence and demands to know Ijin's true identity. Ijin responds with a faint smirk, calmly questioning whether Lim truly wants the answer. His expression soon turns cold, and a dangerous warning follows. The truth, he implies, carries a deadly price. Rage erupts within Lim. He cannot believe that someone he considers inferior would dare threaten him. Ijin releases his inner energy, filling the air with pressure, and repeats his challenge. By this point, Ijin has no intention of backing down. Too many lines have already been crossed. Instead of revealing the truth, Ijin toys with him. He introduces himself mockingly as the eldest son of drifting clouds and flowing water. Lim listens carefully, realizing that no ordinary man could win the Heavenly Dragon Grand Tournament. Ijin continues the act, claiming his family runs a humble fruit shop and follows a philosophy of living naturally. Though the story is clearly false, Lim remains cautious, warning himself not to underestimate this man. Without answering further, Ijin abruptly turns the topic to killing. He questions how many people Lim has slain and how many of them were truly guilty. Lim dismisses the questions, asserting that the martial world crushes the weak without mercy. Ijin reflects on his own path, admitting that he once considered his father's teachings, but still believes his chosen road is not wrong. He remarks inwardly that DONGHUA is filled with scoundrels who must be dealt with. Lim senses the sudden danger and instinctively reaches for his sword. In the blink of an eye, Ijin vanishes. Ijin's ability to appear, vanish, and witness his crime leaves him deeply unsettled. Still, Lim convinces himself that no one would believe Ijin. The next morning, the city market bustles with life. Merchants shout, crowds gather, and the streets overflow with noise. Ijin walks through the market with Kuryan and her younger sister to buy medicine. Suryan is filled with joy. After years of illness and isolation, she can finally walk freely among people. Suryan expresses deep gratitude toward Ijin, knowing he is responsible for her healing. Without his intervention and the help he brought, she would still be bedridden. Ijin responds warmly, encouraging her to eat well and exercise. Suryan laughs, promises to recover fully, and dreams of learning martial arts one day. Cheryan watches quietly, relieved and happy to see her sister healthy again. As Cheryan looks at Ijin, she reflects on how much effort he put into Suryun's recovery. His care feels genuine. When he notices her staring, she turns away in embarrassment and quickly changes the subject. Ijin points out a nearby stall and heads off to inspect the medicine, carefully questioning the vendor to ensure its quality. Left alone, Suryun nudges Cheryan playfully and teases her about Ijin. She praises his kindness, strength, and character, insisting that such a man should not be let go. Cheryan is caught off guard. She has never thought deeply about relationships, having devoted her life to cultivation. Listening to her sister, she begins to question her own feelings. Her thoughts are interrupted when loud commotion erupts nearby. A large group of martial artists storms into the city, fully armed. Civilians stare in shock as the force marches boldly through the streets. Ijin returns and comments that he expected their arrival. He downplays the situation, claiming he invited them for amusement. With medicine secured, the group begins heading home. The armed group continues forward. This is the White Tiger unit of the Southern Mountain Alliance, led by Yang and Mong. Beside him rides an elderly martial master, the man who annihilated the Ghost Slayer clan. Soon after, the patriarch of the North Sky Overlord family arrives with his own armed force to intercept them. Tension fills the air as both leaders release their inner energy openly. Southern Mountain Alliance leader reveals the reason for his arrival. An assassination attempt has been ordered against the Southern Mountain Alliance's young heir, and the trail leads to the North Sky Overlord family. The revelation shocks everyone. Lim Cheonse reacts with disbelief, immediately declaring that any traitor responsible will be cast out and punished. He insists this is a conspiracy meant to damage relations. Southern Mountain Alliance's master signals restraint, explaining that he revealed the truth out of respect for their long history. Understanding the implication, the Lim Cheonse realizes the true culprit is likely Lim. To avoid public chaos, both sides agree to move the discussion elsewhere. High above, Ijin sits on a rooftop, eating snacks and watching the chaos unfold with amusement. Whispers spread below as citizens speculate about war. Satisfied, Ijin prepares to leave. Before he does, a desperate scene catches his eye. An old man begs a White Tiger squad member for information about his missing son. The martial artist dismisses him cruelly and prepares to strike. Ijin intervenes silently, flicking a peanut infused with inner energy. Just as the attack begins, someone intercepts the projectile mid-air and sends it back unharmed. Ijin catches it effortlessly and turns his head. An old man stands nearby. It is the same terrifying martial master who wiped out an entire sect on his own. Ijin feels no fear when the martial master appears. Instead, excitement spreads across his face. He immediately recognizes the man as the strongest expert of the Southern Peak Alliance. Killing intent quietly mixes into his smile. Nearby, a low-ranking martial artist finally notices the tension and reacts in alarm, directing angry attention toward Ijin. Despite the noise, Ijin keeps his gaze fixed on the elderly master alone. Drawing a sword in public would damage the Southern Peak Alliance's reputation, something the elder understands well. He quickly identifies Ijin as the victor of the Heavenly Dragon Grand Tournament. The low-ranking martial artist knows little beyond the name, which is expected given his status. The elder, however, feels anticipation. Ijin's youthful appearance clashes with the immense pressure radiating from him. Moved by instinct, the elder slowly draws his sword. His inner energy flares as he prepares himself. Ijin responds with quiet interest, surprised that the elder chooses such a crowded place. Though the urge to clash excites him, Ijin decides against escalating the situation. Timing matters more than desire. The elder carefully studies Ijin, weighing his strength with seasoned patience. His focus breaks when civilians nearby begin talking about the arrival of major faction leaders. Whispers of a private meeting between the Southern Peak Alliance and the North Sky Overlord family raise fears of war. The elder lowers his head and withdraws his energy. He slowly sheaths his sword, choosing restraint despite the provocation. With a final look toward Ijin, he signals that today is not the right time. Without ceremony, he turns away and leaves, followed by the low-ranking martial artist who had earlier shown aggression. Elsewhere, inside the North Sky Overlord family estate, a sharp slap rings through the hall. Blood stains Lim's cheek. Cheonse, furious beyond restraint, strikes his own grandson. As his anger settles, he demands an explanation. Ordering an assassination through a sect, especially as the family heir, is unforgivable. Lim is unaware that his scheme has already collapsed. He listens as Cheonse reveals the disaster. The assassination target believed to be Ijin is actually the successor of the Southern Peak Alliance. Shock flashes across Lim's face. He insists the order targeted only Ijin and no one else. Cheonse's fury cools slightly as realization dawns. Lim presses his stance, reminding him of the family principle to crush all obstacles. Cheonse explains that the Southern Peak Alliance claims to have proof the assassination targeted Suchin Yang. Lim shifts blame to Sanghi Park, claiming the man vanished after handling the matter. Cheonse emphasizes that Sanghi Park vanished immediately after completing the assignment, making him the key to uncovering the truth. Sensing danger, Lim carefully suggests that Sanghi Park may have betrayed the family and aligned with enemies from the Dragon and Phoenix tournament. Cheonse declares that he will believe Lim for now. If the truth proves false, Lim will not survive. Lim understands the danger fully. If the Southern Mountain Alliance exposes everything publicly, his execution could become a political offering. Still, the Southern Mountain Alliance seeks more than revenge. They hold the secret for leverage. For now, Lim can only redirect the disaster elsewhere. Rather than killing Lim outright, Ijin crafts a punishment fitting his crimes. He alters the assassination order, replacing the target with Suchin Yang. He also knows that Lim murdered Sanghi Park. By entangling two great factions, Ijin creates a conflict spiraling beyond control. The next day at Divine Wind Manor, Muyang reports that rumors now flood Wuhan, exactly as instructed. Ijin praises his work. If the Wuhan Merchant Alliance sides with the North Sky Overlord family, the Southern Mountain Alliance will suffer greatly. The rumors alone already cause unrest. Muyang reports that the Merchant Alliance plans an emergency gathering that evening. Ijin finds this development interesting. Muyang marvels at the scale of the plan. The North Sky Overlord family once controlled all of Wuhan's commerce, directly and indirectly. With the center of the Palm clan gone, 70% of the market stands vacant. Normally, the family would reclaim it. Ijin plans to seize it instead. Ijin acknowledges uncertainty. The merchants act on profit alone and resist coercion. They will negotiate carefully. Muyang questions whether another plan exists. Ijin admits none is finalized and chooses direct action. As night falls, Ijin heads to the meeting place. Guards block his entry, refusing access without an invitation. Muyang quietly surveys the heavy security, skilled. Martial artists guard every angle, hired without faction loyalty. Ijin introduces himself and requests his arrival be announced. The guards dismiss him, mocking his youth and status. Ijin remains composed, repeating his request. The guard's rage explodes and he attacks. The strike never lands. Muyang intercepts, crushing the guard's arm. Killing intent erupts as Muyang punishes the insult to his young master. One brutal punch sends the guard unconscious. More guards rush in. Muyang dismantles them effortlessly. Ijin walks forward calmly, amused by the chaos. He reminds Muyang to restrain himself. Soon, every guard lies defeated. Ijin reaches the pavilion entrance. From inside, a powerful aura surges outward. A figure wielding a massive axe awaits, promising a serious confrontation.